Hey, welcome everyone for this meeting for the Township of Busselton on December 21st, 2022. I will start with roll call. Councillor Hurst. Present. Councillor Goida.
Present.
Councillor Spoulos. Present. And Councillor Bailey.
Here.
All right. And we'll begin our moment of reflection. That concludes our moment of reflection. We have the resolution for confirmation of the agenda, please.
The council approves the December 21st, 22 agenda. An addendum is circulated and that council approves the additions to the agenda as follows. Consent item 6.1.3, questions received from council seeking additional information and the corresponding responses provided by staff. Consent item 6.14, Halton Hamilton Source Protection Committee Municipal Member Nomination Letter, and consent item 6.15, Busselton Lake Conservation Association Letter regarding lake access.
Okay, the mover for that, please. Councillor Spoulos, seconder. Councillor Bailey. Any items councillors would like to remove? Discussion. Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary? Oh, sorry, I did that backwards. That was the consent agenda items. All right, any disclosure of pecuniary interest?
Mr. Mayor, I do. It's to do with item 9.2.3 report PIN 2022-37/2023 grant application program. The organization Friends of Mill Creek is seeking to receive grant funding. As I am a member of this organization, I have an indirect pecuniary interest.
John, the other disclosures? Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, I as well have a conflict with report FIN 2022-037 grant application, specifically in regards to the grant application for Busselton State Communities, as I was the applicant who put in the request. So I'll excuse myself from conversation and discussion about that grant.
You. One five. Okay, please. Welcome, Ryan.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me.
All right, maybe begin when you're ready.
Okay, great. So yeah, thanks to Mayor and Council and staff for giving us a chance. I wanted to be there in person today, but I've come down with a bit of a cold, so I thought I would call in. We really wanted to reach out. I'm with Habitat for Humanity. I'm the Director of Community Engagement and Development, and we wanted to reach out and just as an opportunity to welcome the new council and to share just a little bit about what it is that we do here at Habitat. And so I can speak to that with or without slides. I believe there were some slides there, but is it better if I just kind of give a quick overview and we can move on?
That'd be fine.
Okay, that's great. So you may be familiar with the Habitat model. We are the Guelph Wellington affiliate of Habitat for Humanity. So if there were to be a project in your community, we would be the affiliate that would work with you on that project. So we work to address affordable housing and specifically affordable home ownership. So we understand there's a broad range of affordable housing solutions across the spectrum, from rental housing to transitional and shelter housing, all the way up to market rentals and market purchasing. There's a whole spectrum of housing. So we're one part of that. We believe we have a model that is incredibly impactful for our community and for the individuals in terms of what we do. We're scaling up our impact at our affiliate. So we're not doing the traditional single family detached dwelling builds. The last project that we built was a 28 unit project called City View Village project in Guelph. And so this is affordable home ownership through a condominium structure, but they were stacked townhouses there, and we were able to serve more families through that kind of build. We're ramping up our building ambitions. So we have 2 builds, one in Guelph on Speedvale Avenue. That's an apartment building that we have the land secured and purchased for. And we have another project in Fergus as well. Really quickly about in terms of the impact on the community, our last project, just as an example of the types of folks that are living there, 10 of our families work at Linamar, a number of others work at Cargill, other factories and businesses in the community that really workforce development. If you've sort of had an update already from your EDO, I'm sure they've identified that as one of the big challenges for a local economy. And so our homes really give an opportunity for the employees of these businesses to put down roots and to invest in their community. And then the impact back to the individuals, we believe our model is advantageous for the individuals. So if there's affordable rental units, their CMHC definition for that is 30% of your annual income that you're spending on housing. We follow the same affordability criteria, but what we do through our mortgage model is allow the families an opportunity to build wealth and build equity in that home. And that's intergenerational wealth. So it has a number of impacts, both on the occupants today, but also on their children for tomorrow, and provides them flexibility for, in the event that they need to get into a retirement home or something, they have equity that they can leverage. So it builds a social security net. It allows them to invest in their community as, longstanding residents of that community. And it's something that helps give people a hand up. It's a hand up, not a handout, is what we talk about. So we believe there's really positive impacts on both fronts. In terms of what we do, we have a scalable model. So if there is ever interest or opportunity in communities, one of the major hurdles for us is land. It takes time and due diligence to work through that process, which we're very happy to do. But one of the really major things that or partnerships that we look for is for the opportunity to work together on a project through a land and building and construction process. I think that's all. I don't have my the slideshow there in front of me, but we wanted to welcome the new council. We understand that there's a tall order in place with regards to housing, both affordable and market housing. We do both right now. We do sell market housing to help subsidize our habitat families. So we believe we've built a really sustainable model in that way that's viable. And so we're part of the solution. We would love to work with council down the road. Right now we do have our hands full with the 2 projects, but we're certainly always looking ahead a couple of years to see what we might be able to do. And if nothing else, there's great opportunities for volunteering and build days if there are staff or employees or other businesses from the community that want to get involved into having an impact on affordable home ownership. So that's all. I've taken up too much time already, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. By no means are you taking up too much time. We appreciate you coming today. Councillor Hurst.
I'm just curious, Ryan, have you had any previous projects within the township in the past? And how have they gone, if there have been any?
I don't believe we have. I'm new to the organization, and we've kind of focused in Guelph, Elora, and some in Fergus as well. I believe there were some further north. But we are certainly looking to if there's interest.
Councilor Goyda?
Thank you. I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to say thanks for coming today and sharing the work that you've been doing. Lots of great things happening, and it's great to be in part. So thank you very much for coming.
Councilor Spools?
Yes, I also don't have any questions, and I echo Councilor Goyda's sentiment, so thank you for coming, and hopefully things improve for you, and might see you here.
Councilor Bailey?
Thank you, Ryan. Just piggybacking on Councilor Hurst's question, is there a wait list or anything for our local municipality that you're aware of for a need? And if so, what are the barriers to actually having something in Puslinch?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of a wait list for individual families, we are currently accepting applications from folks, and so people are eligible if they're in Guelph or Wellington County. So the two developments, if there are local families that you know of that are looking. In terms of a wait list for build projects, there's not currently a wait list. We do have a number of projects. Well, we have 2 projects on the go and another one that we're considering. We're going through some of the planning and due diligence work on that. But what are some of the obstacles? I guess land is a big thing for us, and you know, a lot of the time we're working with land that requires a little bit more work and isn't quite as attractive to market developers. So it requires more due diligence work, which is more money up front and longer timelines. So if and when there's land available at a cost that makes it feasible for us from someone, whether that's from a community or from a business or an individual, we're really able to scale our model and start working on that. Not immediately, but we're able to work that in. So there's there's not a formal waiting list, and really the land and the you know, the having a cooperative active partner in our local council is super important. But we also just operate within the regular policies and procedures that any developer would as well. So
Great. Well, hopefully by delegating here today, you know, someone might hear your call for some partnership.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming today.
All right, thank you, Ryan. I picked up on a couple points you made. When I hear Habitat for Humanity, the vision in my mind is a single detached home, a plethora of volunteers building it, and it's all good. But when you mentioned that it's maybe transitioning to multi-unit dwellings and providing more opportunity for more families in need, that's excellent, as well as building that intergenerational wealth. So I think it's a wonderful program so that you can help these families build that wealth and improve their lives. But you know, we understand land is difficult to come by, and especially in Puslinch with you know, the real estate market exploding. I'm going to see more need for Habitat for Humanity for families, and if there is ever any opportunity in Puslinch and we are aware of it, we will definitely reach out to your organization. So thank you today for coming.
yeah, thank you very much to Mayor and council. We appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for your thoughtful questions.
Have a great day. Resolution to receive that one.
Council receives a delegation by Ryan Deska on behalf of Habitat for Humanity for information.
Gonna move for that, please. Councilor Bailey, second by Councilor Spools, all in favor? Very good. Right, now we're on to Mr. Esco. You're coming in the hot seat.
So are we going to do the slides or no?
We don't need to go slide by slide, but Ms. Hoyfox can show them on the screen.
I mean, you've all seen the slides, I don't really need to do a slide flip of it. We've identified a property on the Hamlin Expressway, which is zoned industrial, south of it, north of it, adjoining. It's 61 acres, 6 acres of it are zoned industrial. What we want to put in there is an innovation center which would start with 2 head offices, Upper Canada Forest Products and my company, Danby Appliances. The advantage of head offices is head offices have a variety of jobs. So we have marketing people, salespeople, accounting people, engineering, designers, as well as, of course, manufacturing and warehouse people. So you do have a wide variety. The complex would be built. We were saying we can have 600 jobs. About 350 of those are existing jobs that moved from Guelph and Mississauga. Upper Canada Forest Products is located in Mississauga. The building would be built with Danby built on one side, Upper Canada built on the other, and in the middle would be shared boardrooms, conference rooms, classrooms, a gym, a daycare. And then that space would be slightly larger than what we need and would have co-working space. And what the co-working space would be for, and we would also have some space, which would be warehouse and manufacturing for food tech, ag tech incubator to incubate ag tech and food tech companies. I was one of the co-founders of Communitech in Waterloo. Communitech did exactly this for tech startups. Now, the reason we don't want to do exactly what Waterloo did for tech startups is following, you'll never get there. Guelph already has a reputation for ag. We've already talked to the University of Guelph. They're on board. We would co-locate Innovation Guelph in that space, and they're on board. And ag tech, food tech is more around what Bush Lynch and Guelph can be known as. And it has not yet been done. Also, ag tech, food tech needs physical space. And that's the difference between doing technology businesses. If you have a bunch of people writing apps, they can just do it at a desk. With the internet, you need actual physical space. We would be building a net zero building. It would be an eco show room. It would be world class. It would tie Bush Lynch into the innovation corridor. And so why don't I stop there? And do you have any questions, or should Dave go on to here?
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Dave Aston with MHBC. And what I've been doing with the team is taking a look at the provincial policy direction, the planning principles, and taking kind of the vision and the need for such uses in context of what needs to be considered when we talk about zoning for lands and requesting community infrastructure housing accelerator. What would the municipality be looking at? What would the province be looking at from a planning perspective? And standing back from really the details, but looking at the planning principles and how does what's being proposed fit within the context of where the province is going in supporting investment in communities for both housing and jobs, and then local municipal objectives associated with land use planning and strategic economic investment and long-term prosperity. So I've broken it down into 4 things. One is the need. Is there a need for what's being proposed? Location. It's always important when talking about planning principles or investment, impact, and design. And so from a need perspective, we've gone through the information associated with the county's work and growth forecasting to 2051 and understanding land needs within the county and the township. And what we understand is there is a need. There's jobs being forecast, additional jobs to 2051, and there's a need for 30 additional hectares of land to support those job forecasts. What we're proposing is about 20 to 24 hectares of land that's recognizing part of the land's already designated rural industrial. So this proposal helps fulfill that need. And that's important because you need the land, you need the space for the jobs that are forecasted. So when looking at where do you put that land, we think about the location. And the location really is very strategic. It's along, or it's at really a major arterial, which feeds its way down into the major goods movement corridor, Highway 401. And Highway 401 is along innovation corridors. So as Jim was mentioning, we've got, an agri tech innovation proposal within an innovation corridor and a goods movement. The site really is what I call a rounding out of existing settlement area, employment area. Again, part of the lands are designated. The rest of the lands really are an extension of that with adjacency to existing employment areas. And that's a positive thing that when looking at where to locate uses, provincial policy, local policy says locate adjacent to existing settlement uses. There's also really good proximity to education. Jim's mentioned the University of Guelph, skilled labor force with that comes with that, and a lot of population and community area that would be important for the jobs, and the jobs would support the housing as well. When we talk about impact, we take a look at I guess the physical and the social and the environmental impact. From a physical impact perspective, the lands are not within a prime agricultural area, they're directly adjacent to an existing settlement area. So there's really no impact from that regard, and they're really a rounding out. The CIHA considerations are only allowed in areas outside of the Greenbelt land area, and there's some other considerations. And so just these lands are outside of the Greenbelt land area. From a social impact, we talk about land use compatibility. The location of this site doesn't create any additional impacts with sensitive land uses in the surrounding area, and that it's not adjacent to any rural residential uses that would be considered sensitive uses. And really, it's not the type of use that creates that type of impact, such as a major manufacturing facility, like a stamping plant or something like that. So there's no major compatibility issues. It's not within a wellhead protection area, which again, I think is a very important thing in context of locating these types of uses. So from a planning and land use perspective, the site really checks all the criteria for where you would want to locate the type of proposed use. And from a design perspective, what we would be doing really as a next step is getting into the details with the site plan approval and all of those requirements that typically occur in working with the township and any agencies through that process. So the intent really is to get the zoning in place as the first step, and then work with the township and your team and the county and the GRCA on the details associated with the site plan process. So from a planning perspective, what's being proposed meets really the good planning principles of addressing need for use, the location of the use, minimizing impacts. And then from an economic long-term prosperity perspective, again, what's being proposed really, in my opinion, needs that really the aspects associated with investment in the community, investment in jobs, and just overall consideration and economic benefits directly and indirectly to the municipality.
So we have already consulted with most organizations, including we have support of the Chief of Mississauga of the Credit. We have support of Ontario, who asked us to ask the township to do the CHIA. We have support at the highest level. They would like us to do this project, and they'd like us to do this project in Ontario, and they are in favor of this land. We know it's a lot of work for the township. We understand that. What we would like to do is help you do it, because we actually can't apply for a CHIA. You need to apply for the CHIA, and there's work. You have to have an active council. We need to support you in what is the active council that you need. We need to do a neighborhood study. Of course, you need to do a neighborhood study. We will be here on every step to support you. Dave, you actually made a list of what's needed. We also looked at the CHIA process about what work and studies needed to be done prior to submitting the CHIA, and we have done all of those studies. So we've done all of the studies and whatnot. We are now at the point where we need to do this, need to make a decision. If Push Lynch is where we're going to do this project, or whether we do it in another community. I mean, just practically speaking, we don't yet even own the land. We have an offer that expires at the end of February. I don't believe we'll be able to extend the offer. We already had it extended once. We need to make a decision. Is the township willing to do this? Township is willing to do this, then we would love to move forward with you and partner to make this happen.
Yeah, I think Jim, just on the CIHA process, we did take a look at it with regard to the requirements for a submission from the municipality to the minister. And, you know, there are some very straightforward things of a resolution, a PMAP, and, you know, some documentation from the municipality confirming the zoning. And in between there is information required as far as what the draft bylaw would look like. A list of approvals that would also be required so that when my understanding is when the minister gets the information, there's, you know, the resolution from council suggesting, yes, we would like to see this in our community. And here are the things that we would like to make sure that the minister includes as permits or approvals or next steps, so that the community, the municipalities and the council stays involved in moving the project from the CIHA, which is putting the zoning into place, through the design process to the permit process. So that's where, as Jim was mentioning, he can assist to pull that package together. Ultimately, it would be a package that comes from the municipality. But I think there's pretty much everything that we have done that we could package at this point now to assist with that getting to the minister should there be support to move forward.
So are there questions we didn't answer for you?
Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna ask you a couple of questions ahead of opening up to council. Can you speak to why you're leaning towards the CHIA versus doing a traditional OPA application?
Mostly speed and timing. That's also what the province asked us to do. There is no other land. There's no other 60-acre property in Push Lynch or Well that would be suitable. There's two other communities which we would move to if we have to do that.
So is it your belief that the CHIA process that the council would take on would be a faster process than an OPA?
That's what I believe, yes.
Councillor Hurst.
I don't have any questions. I think this is very helpful for me. I think my comment is, I think anytime the region can attract new business and growth and jobs is a good thing. I think in terms of the planning process, that's certainly a new piece for me as a new councillor. So I guess I'll leave it to staff to guide us what the appropriate process is. But I appreciate hearing this at a personal level. It's exciting to see businesses wanting to grow in this area. Thanks.
Councillor Goda.
Yeah, first of all, thanks very much for being here today and sharing this vision. I do find the potential opportunity to be home to such an innovative and forward thinking type of facility and what that can mean for Push Lynch to be intriguing, definitely. And I've spent some time learning of the work that you have done, Mr. Russell, over the years, and you know, definitely have a very impressive resume, and you've done a lot of great work, and helped a lot of people. And I have no doubt that would continue here in Push Lynch, and that's exciting to me as well. And I think that would be really good for our community economically. I can see by the documents that were sent that there's already been a lot of work put into this vision. And I would definitely like to learn more, to become more informed in specifics, both the positive and the potential negative impacts of this whole idea, but it definitely has my attention. Just from a high level, I do see a concern in regards to the access to this piece of property. And just the sheer volume of traffic that will be generated, particularly truck traffic and that traffic having to come either via side road 20 or concession board. And what that means, what that impact is to our community and to the residents that live there, and to the road infrastructure and all of those things. And the second concern that I would have with this screening of what I would assume to be quite a large facility from the residents that are directly adjacent to that facility. And those would be the two big areas that I would want to get a much better sort of understanding of and the impacts of that. And I don't know if you've already been working on addressing those concerns and if you have undertaken any kind of consultation with any of the residents that would be impacted by that. And maybe I'll ask you that today, but those would be sort of the two main areas that I would like to get a certain level of comfort on.
So one of the next steps, we have to do a community consultation. So the plan would be to try to do that in late January. So absolutely, we need to do that plan. And that would be done prior to this. Traffic, we talked to the Ministry of Transport, MTO, and they're making it a little chicken and egg. They say as soon as we get our CHIA, then we can talk about leaving the concession for southbound open. And just for your information, we're not very truck heavy for companies our size. And our trucks are also, Danby's trucks are not heavy. Upper Canada's trucks are heavy, but they're not as heavy as the gravel trucks that are currently running on those roads. And you're aware they're putting a new cloverleaf just down from this property. So but the traffic cuts in half if we can leave that concession for open. I mean, the traffic would be on the Hamlin, not on the back road. That is a valid concern. And as far as the neighbors go, as far as the footprint of the building and whatnot, we do plan to build a beautiful building. And I think the residents will, they will like that it's not going to be a box. It's going to be a very nice, we're gonna build trails on our community gardens. We're gonna make it part of the community. But there will be some people, I think, who will object. There will always be some NIMBYs. If you're gonna grow, you're gonna have to do this somewhere. The concerns are valid. And so MTO is chicken and egg. They want to do the CHIA, and then you're, oh, you want to get MTO to say yes before you do CHIA. Little chicken and egg. It's logical though, and there's lots of precedent. If you drive up Highway 11, you'll see lots and lots of exits. They only go one way, so that you're not. I understand why you would not want to cross over the Hamlin. Crossing over the Hamlin is a big deal. They've got the cloverleaf just going in just down from there. It's not. Excellent question.
Thank you.
Councilor Spools.
So I don't have any specific questions of you, but I'd like to have a report prepared by staff on a variety of questions. So I'll leave my comments for after questions I would have of staff before I can participate actively. But I do like the idea of having a public meeting because it's important that the local residents have an appreciation of what's going on and have an opinion and ability to provide the info.
All right, Councilor Spools, you would like to discuss your concerns after the delegation or the staff, or when do you feel it's appropriate to do
I would assume that there'll be a recommendation to do something with this presentation, and I would pose my questions in conflict with that recommendation. Okay.
Councilor Bailey?
Thank you. Yeah, I don't need to repeat what Councillor Goydas just said, but my issue as well was just around traffic impacts and traffic concerns. And so I would need to get a lot more information, make sure we have public input on what's happening there. My second issue is around this community infrastructure housing accelerator tool. That it's a very new tool that's come to us, and we all kind of don't know how this works out. AMO had put in some comments about the tool, and there's still some concern around it's unclear how the tool will address zoning matters. They highlight more details are requested on how the proposed tool will work. Specifically with matters around public consultation and public notice. So I would just kind of reiterate what Amo's concerns are using this tool, and I would like to know a little more information about it as well. So,
Mr. Mayor, if I may just, Councilor Bailey with the tool. Like Amos' comments that I think are good ones, and then were received into the province's consideration of establishing the tool itself, and then the guidelines that are prepared, and also the requirements for the request to come from the municipality to the minister. And part of that does include the public consultation component. That's something that the municipality wants to see. With regard to the zoning and the request, there is a requirement that the municipality also provide documentation from, a planner or an internal person, I think it says, with knowledge in land use planning, that what's being proposed to the minister by way of zoning is appropriate for what's being proposed by way of the use. So that's where I say that's something we can communicate and work with the municipal planner to make sure that, should council see this as a good process to move forward, that the zoning is appropriate. And also the GIA identifies that the municipality may request to the minister on what conditions may be applied, or what other additional studies or processes may need to occur. So that's a component built into the request to the minister, so that, for example, should the minister proceed to support the zoning, should the county, a lot of shoulds here, so I apologize, but just trying to give you an idea, that the minister can, put in place the zoning subject to certain conditions. Like I said, that would be site plan approval, which would then be kicked back into the process with the municipality. And if there are any other agency permits or requirements. So I think in my opinion, what the GIA is doing is it's moving and it's way into a more of a municipal led request to the minister, and giving the municipality opportunity to request to the minister what we'd like to see should the zoning be put into place. I think that's where our team's been working to say, we've been doing a lot of that background work to get to the point where we see that the request is feasible, and it's logical in the sense as far as the proposed uses, where they're located, how to move forward. The public input, that's an important component. We can share the vision and the planning, and like to respond to some of the questions and details associated with traffic and studies and coordination with the municipality and ministry. Then that would be something that would come out of a condition to the zoning or the site plan process as it relates to traffic studies. So I think it's a new tool. It's in my mind, it's a good tool from a timing perspective. To your question, Mayor Seeley, the challenge with the current policy regime is that this project, when looking at the location, if the lands aren't entirely designated, a request cannot be made by a proponent to do an open. That has to be done through the municipal comprehensive review, which starts at the county level and then works through down to the municipal level. And so that is still going to take some time before someone can even start to make a submission for that to occur. So this helps with timing and process to get them, exciting, innovative projects off the ground, and get the right zoning into place where the municipality sees that, this makes sense, and we'd like to see it happen.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions. First of staff, the point they just raised with don't they have to go through the MCR, the county's in the middle of an MCR. Is there an opportunity to add this land into consideration through the NCR, or is it likely too late in that process?
I'd have to check with the county planning staff. I can't answer that question right now. You'd have to look at the map.
My concern with the position that a GEO would be faster than an OPA, I'm not convinced. Is I feel that council would need everything spelled out quite clearly with very little unknowns before they would support a GEO, because then we're at risk. And the members are already mentioning traffic, and because 20th Side Road is a residential area. And we don't desire heavy trucks on that road. And with the associated difficulties of the northbound traffic to access the site, I spoke with one of your colleagues last week or 2 weeks ago about it. There could be an issue where they want to go down, but come off the new mid block, come down to 34, and then come up 20th Side Road because it's the shortest route. Right, but that's a residential area, and that road isn't really adequate for heavy trucks. Concession 4 is a different situation because we have the transfer station on it, so it might even be an aggregate. Maybe not, I don't remember, it doesn't matter. Heavy trucks drive on it already. This 20th Side Road is the major concern. So another component is, I would hope the access to the property could be off concession 4. I know it touches briefly there, but sightlines, there's a lot going on. So traffic is a major concern. Another one I want to ask you about. Servicing, so I understand it'd be private well and septic, and that's pretty good. But there's other services that your business may require. And if there's additional costs associated with those, who's going to bear that cost? Are you going to be looking for the municipality for assistance on that? Or if that rears its head, that you're going to just absorb that into your costs?
I believe we're gonna look at absorbing it into our cost. We already did studies on where the electricity is that so to the extent that electricity comes in, we already know where that is. Again, we're not heavy on electricity use. So
You mentioned you're supposed to be net zero, so in that one report, it mentions that you may be able to connect to the 8.2 kilovolt. If
Right.
not, there's a very large expense to bring power there.
Right.
And this municipality doesn't have the ability to assist on that.
I understand that. On as far as truck traffic goes, would you not allow a truck terminal to go in on 6 acres that are currently zoned? They're currently zoned. Just put a truck terminal in there. That's perfectly located for a truck terminal, and that's what they're doing at well, just here, right? It's the next best location to put a truck terminal in. 6 acres is quite adequate to do that. And you're gonna have more truck traffic than you get from us.
Well, I would say to you that if somebody came with an application for a truck terminal, they would get heavy resistance from myself. So I'll back up a little bit. Residential growth, we have forecasts that are very slow going forward. Our director of finance has put in a very conservative 3 consent severances going forward for budgetary purposes, because we use the parkland dedication fees, DCs, all that stuff. 3 going forward. Proposals like this are what we need. We need employment lands to be developed, because then it takes the burden of running the municipality off the residential tax base. That's right. Because you guys pay a lot more tax. So it is a good news thing. The challenge is the location with the access, right? And if we have all the neighbors on 20th Side Road not in support, it's going to be difficult. So that might fall on your laps to, for lack of a better word, lobby the neighbors that you won't be impacting their quality of life. And I was speaking to Sir Leggett, about the traffic, and he mentioned that you own your vehicles and you employ the employees that operate them. That's correct. Or
That
That's his-
Rob employs and has his own trucks. We have a few, but most of the many of the trucks that come in are not our trucks.
Well, see, that to me is concerning, because then how do you control the way they access your property? Because if they're,
We already do that. It's very routine when you're dealing with any of the larger trucking companies, to tell them the route that they have to
that's
go on.
that's
So
important.
we can do that, and the number of drop-offs that wouldn't be on trucks that we have that degree of control on would be infinitesimal.
So, Mr. CAO, do you have a suggestion on how we could go forward with this, whether it be reaching out to the public and reporting back?
I believe I heard a few questions from council. They want to know a little bit more about this new planning tool and the provinces that is approved as achieving. So I think it's important to get you as council members that information so that you're comfortable with what you would be committing to. Another aspect of this, is taking into consideration the timing constraints that have been mentioned. I think the other aspect that you as council would want to have a level of comfort with, you mentioned that, was what's the public's opinion of this, or what's their comments on it. So it might be a good idea for the municipality, in partnership with the proponent, to undertake some type of public information evening where they could present their case, and then the public could be there to ask any specific questions that they might have of the proponent. Our role as municipalities to kind of facilitate that discussion so that we could then get the sense of the community from that we could share with you. And then I think, given that, you as members of council then would be in a better position to decide on your comfort level with proceeding it as I believe the proponent is requesting to take. That'd be my suggestion.
Okay. Do you have a resolution for that?
Staff have drafted a resolution. I think the pieces that we're looking for a little bit of direction on from council is the specific items that you'd like us to report back on. So I can share my screen if you'd like, Mr. Chair. I can make this a bit bigger too. I know it's difficult to read. So I can read it, Mr. Chair.
Sure, please.
The council received the delegation by Jim Estelle and Dave Aston to provide council with information relating to the Estelle Innovation Community Aid Development Proposal. And that's council direct staff to report back on the differences between an official plan amendment process and the Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator tool, and the additional information as follows. So again, we're looking for a little bit of direction here on that additional information. And whereas the proponent has not undertaken community engagement on their development proposal, and whereas the township is committed to ensuring the community has access to information and is consulted on development proposals within the township, therefore council directs staff to send correspondence to all potentially affected property owners seeking input and providing relevant information regarding the proponent's proposal. And further, that council directs staff to schedule a public information meeting in early February 2023 to solicit community feedback on the proposal, subject to the proponent confirming by way of written agreement to pay all township costs associated with the public information meeting.
Can I get a mover for that, just so we can discuss it? Councilor Spoulos, second by Councilor Goida, and I will go around the table. Councilor Hurst. Yeah. Councilor Goida.
Yes, I think that the concerns I have would be included in part of that public consultation piece, so I think that addresses.
Councilor Spoulos.
Yes, I have a series of questions that I think should be included in the report back from staff. So it's one of Courtney could put them on the screen. Some of them are already covered by this motion, so I'm okay with that. It's just there's some details that are not covered.
Looking with these screens.
Okay, so the first one is the first step of the steps to bring this in the process to bring this to realization, and when will be opportunity public meeting. So the public meeting you already touched on. I just like to understand the process. I assume by one of the motions you have, you're going to provide the CHIRA as well as the rezoning process, so you'll be able to indicate the steps involved. So I think we're okay. I don't have a concern with that.
Can I interject there?
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe we can just make sure we contact the county and see if they're planning on reviewing the employment lands through the MCR that we're doing right now. Or if it's already been completed, right? Because if it's coming, then that would help speed up maybe the OPA process.
Sure, okay, yeah. The next point I had was, as part of the process, will there be a study similar to our environmental assessment? I understand, I know environmental assessments are for public undertakings, but there are elements of the environmental assessment that are, I think, appropriate for this. Things like assessing the natural environment, social, economic impacts, and associate and proposed mitigation measures. So some of the issues that I would concern about is environmental loss of secondary agricultural land, noise, air quality, light overspill, residential wells, and the social, the quality of life, and non-economic effect on current farms. There's a poultry farm across the road. There's property value will be concerned. And on the flip side, will be an assessment of the benefits of township will weigh against any impacts identified in study above. So you have the yin and the yang. And then there's other costs that the township would be borne. The hard cost, if the proponent is unsuccessful getting access from the handling, then we're going to be looking at truck traffic on our roads. And what sort of costs are we looking at that the township's going to have to pay for? And are there any other hard costs to consider? Soft costs? Well, we're going to have the consultant review the proponent's plans and all that sort of thing to take. There'll be increased in road maintenance costs, no plowing, et cetera. I don't know if there's any other soft costs. Development charges. What about the current legislation? Is that going to affect the quantum of development charges we can claim? And local employment, I guess that ties in with you, Mr. Mayor. So what's the estimated number of employees that we live in Wilson could get from us? Right now, we understand there's a 250 new employment opportunities here, and how much of that is going to come from residents within Wilson. So that for me is also a concern, and I share your comment that we should have the county look at that.
Do you want to include that all in the resolution, or how do you want to handle that?
I'm willing to go and have the rest of council comment on it. If they think it's appropriate, or think we want to have certain things taken out.
Sure. Councillor Hurst. It's a lot. I'm shocked that you're not okay with all that within 10 seconds of hearing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good. I think it just generally, I think this is a positive movement. We just need to do our collective work and understand all the ramifications and the zoning challenges and everything and the impacts in the community. So I'm supportive of going through this process. I think these are the right questions to ask.
Does staff have any concerns with reporting back on the majority of that? I mean, it may not have to be captured in the resolution, but just an understanding that these are the items identified.
I think we can do our best to gather that information together for council. That I agree that this is important information for you to know, for you to feel comfortable, since in this process you'd be taking the lead in the application process. So that's the big difference between this and the normal. So I think it's good for you to have this information, that we can do our best.
So do we have to capture it in the resolution? It can be captured in the minutes somehow? Just as Councilor Spruce's comments, or was the cleanest way for?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would suggest just indicating in the resolution and the additional questions and information as provided to staff.
Can you send me that list?
Sure. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's, thank you for putting that list together, Councilor Spruce. I think it's a lot of information for sure for staff to have to gather, but I think the more information that we have, the better decision we can make and the better comfort level. That's important.
Further comment, Councilor Spruce? Yeah, okay, thank you. Councilor Bailey?
Supportive of it as well. Thank you for putting those questions forward and a little work for staff. We need it.
I just want to sort of ask a question on the public meeting component, because I think that's where we may be able to help out in coordinating and arranging and takes some of the requirements off of your staff resources, as long as we can get contact lists and things, or coordinate with the township on who we need to reach out to. That typically we we have coordinated these, so we can, deal with the mail and deal with who's attending. Make sure council are there, staff are there, and we would prepare the presentation. So I just put that out there just as an offer, as far as when we talk about the public meeting, if the language could be that it's, us being coordinating with the township. And that-
Well, there
that'd
definitely-
be help.
Would definitely be coordination, but in our world. It would be best if we ran the public meeting with your assistance, and I know there's gonna be some costs associated with that, because. What we don't want is accusations that, oh, they didn't mail to my street, and you say they did, and then we don't have records of it, so if we run it.
Yeah.
And then we have all the documentation saying, yes, you were notified, it's not gonna be registered mail or anything like that, it's just a little cleaner for us.
Great.
So that
Okay.
we'll save our reputation. You might not like this next part. The review of all the questions from Councilor Sepoulas is going to take considerable staff time. In the resolution, there's a cost recovery for the public information meeting. Typically, through like an OPA amendment, there's fees associated with that, which are help offset the staff time. Should there be a component of some cost recovery for the review for count, or is that something we should absorb?
Under a typical planning application, like you indicated, the cost or the municipality is compensated through the application fees under this process. So, like you said, there is no fee. Having said that, that would mean that if council directs staff to investigate all these and then review any reports that they might prepare, those types of things, that there would be costs associated with that. So if council wanted to do something consistent with other applications, that there should be some type of mechanism for municipality to compensate as well, yes. And I can't tell you off the top of my head what those costs would be. We just, council just finalized this list of questions right now. Maybe what we could do is take a look at those and try and get a sense as to what's the time frame that's going to be required and expense the municipality would incur to put that together. And then that could be incorporated into some type of or added to that agreement for the public meeting funding that we're speaking of. I mean, we could come up with an estimated cost, but I don't think we could do that right here, right now.
No. I'm cognizant of your time restraints. My concern is that, there's already things in the pipeline that are being dealt with, and we're going to have to pull staff off of likely to deal with this project, which likely is an indication that we feel it's important, because we feel it'll be a benefit to the community, but we just need some answers. So I'll just have council discuss that component, whether let the CAO come up with some, I guess it would be almost like a quote as to how much staff would.
Another way to do it, because it would be difficult, and again, like you said, it's all going to take time. What might be an appropriate way is similar to what we do for some developments, is they just provide a financial security and we just give an estimate. We have provided a detailed cost breakdown to do the analysis of these questions, and then the security is provided, and then we just draw funds from that, and then whatever isn't used is given back. That might be a quicker, easier way to do it.
When somebody provides a security like that, if we've never done a CHIA, but say it was an OPA, they end up applying for an OPA. Is it similar to the pre-consultation that money is considered part of the application fee, or is it just standalone, separate? It gets drawn on and there's no consideration for that when they file an application.
I'll defer to Sway once you do that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think this would be a little bit of a different process, because these would be actual funds spent during this process. And then what other planning application would be subsequent to this, such as a site plan control, would stand alone. We would have to charge the fees associated with that, and our use of these charges.
I just want the council to hear that. Okay, so basically what we're discussing is that the staff will put a package together for requested security. But they can be drawn on for review of concerns raised by council. And I'll just see if council has an appetite for that. Councilor Hurst. Support. That's good.
Yeah.
Councilor Smith.
Yes, I'm supportive. I just want to be clear that my specific question asked, will there be a study similar to address all these issues? So I'm not asking for an answer on those issues right now. I'm asking, go there. If there is, then what our CEO is saying, yes, there will be, and these are the costs associated with the Bang Bang Bang. Likewise, on the flip side, I said, what is this? Will there be an assessment of the benefits? Again, yes or no? Yes, and this is the time frame is going to be taken. So I don't expect the answer on all these things, but I expect to see, yes, as part of the process, they will be addressed. And here's what we're, whatever they, staff think they have to say, it's going to take so much time, so much money, all that.
Right, and if they require security, you're still comfortable with that?
Absolutely.
And Mr. CEO, obviously, if the security isn't drawn on, it's returned to the individual. Mr. Bailey,
I'm comfortable with that as well.
good. Are we clear? You're good? I'll give you an opportunity to, any final comments?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I asked for the list was my vision would be that we would address those and the council has to review them. Rather than you trying to do them because you don't actually have the ability to do a lot of those things.
Correct. Yeah, we
So-
need consultants.
Exactly.
But even if you get it.
I understand. You have to review it. I get
Yeah,
you have
the
to
peer
review it,
review
but
on
you
it.
don't have to do it because you don't know what light is
Yeah.
coming off our building or
Right.
whatever, right?
Last comment from me. Do you have a plan B for the traffic? What if you can't get access to the handler?
Will likely, well,
Or thinking about it?
I do not have a good answer. It would have to go on existing roads, which, and that is not good. And you're gonna have a little bit of NIMBYism here, because you wanna have any development, you're gonna have development. I mean, it's an unfortunate fact that some people will be slightly inconvenienced. But, Councillor Sepulveda's, point is you weigh your positives against your negatives and try to do the right thing on balance for the community, not, so no, we don't have a good plan B, but we have very good clout with, the MTO.
And get us some more some bypass, please.
And very good, very good.
That's right.
You need to solve that good thing, okay, when I get the bypass, then we can do it. And there's logic to, there's logic what we're asking. That entrance already exists on the Hamlin. We understand that we have to build a truck acceleration lane. To, just so the trucks can accelerate
Likely deceleration.
on that. Yeah, except there wouldn't be that many trucks going from
Anyways,
northbound, it would be mostly trucks going. Southbound.
okay, so you're gonna work with staff and get some clear
I
direction.
think what we'll do is take the questions once we get those. I took some notes here. We can even do a bit of a follow-up submission with what the reports would be or what the conditions of a CIHA or minister consideration may be. And package that together so that you have that. You can share that then with the county or whoever, or we can meet with the county and staff as well. We'll do our best to take this information today, maybe get some follow-up through the CAO on some of these questions and comments and share what we have. And then that can be shared and we can follow up as well.
Okay, thank you. How are you making it on the resolution? Are you comfortable? We need to reread it or
Whichever you prefer. Like,
anybody want to reread? You know what, please do.
So the council receives a delegation by Jim Estella and Dave Aston to provide council with information relating to the Estella Innovation Community Development Proposal. And that council directs staff to report back on the differences between the official plan amendment process and the community infrastructure and housing accelerator tool. And the additional information and questions provided by council. Whereas the proponent has not undertaken community engagement on the development proposal, and whereas the township is committed to ensuring the community has access to information and is consulted on development proposals within the township. Therefore, council directs staff to send correspondence to all potential affected property owners seeking input and providing relevant information regarding the proponent's proposal. And further, that council directs staff to schedule a public information meeting in early February 2023 to solicit community feedback on the proposal, subject to the proponent confirming by way of written agreement to pay all township costs associated with the public information meeting and any necessary review undertaken by township staff in the form of a security deposit.
We have a word for that, all right?
Yes, Councillor Sepulveda moved, Councillor Boyd is seconded.
Are you too comfortable with that wording still? Okay, any further comments before we vote? All in favor? It was carried. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you found it helpful. Right. We are on the PLCA. Regarding the category 3, are they attending it virtually?
No, there's Brian. Yeah.
Oh,
In the group. I'm up.
you're up. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
You look way different than Art.
My voice doesn't carry quite. My voice doesn't carry quite as well as his, but hopefully you hear me. So good morning, Cecilia, counselors and staff. Thank you on behalf of the Portion Lake Conservation Association for to give you an update on the lake condition, plans and the status of the restoration. So first of all, I'm Brian Reel. I've lived in the lake for 21 years now. So you can tell by the history with some of you have been involved with before that been there for most of the time that we've been undertaking this type of work. And I remember when I first bought the property and moved in there, I read in the paper that unless something was to be done with the lake would be a swamp within 20 years. So it's been 20 years and there's been a lot of work done on the lake. We don't believe we're done yet, but there's a lot of work have been done. As far as I'm hoping to be able to answer any questions you may have today, but if not, I know where the skeletons are, who I can get a look to get those answers, but I have been on the fundraising committee for the entire time I've lived on the lake. I was on the board for several years as the area rep for Bayview. I did spend 10 years as the treasurer on the board. Lauren Wallace, when he moved on the lake and joined the board, he's an accountant. I quickly got rid of that job. The last 4 or 5 years, I have not been active on the board itself, just in supporting roles in the fundraising part of it. But as Art, as you know, all met, or most of them met, maybe you haven't. Anyway, so he's have to step down after doing over 10 years of great work on the lake. I have to step down as the president. He's still on the board as the past president, and they've asked me because of my past experience on the board to step up and join the board again and in order to be president. So hope that can answer the question. I prepared this package, and I did bring copies, but I didn't see an email that you all have access to it. So
Yeah, unless it's different than what you submitted.
and it also said, I don't need to walk you through all the pages and steps, but basically to give you a summary of where we stand. So first page just shows the history of the lake. And again, we are just residents of the lake. We're volunteers of the lake, but we're not running blind. Back in 1999, there was an official study done on the lake, which was supported by the council at that time and paid for it. So that is known as the Bushlands Lake Adaptive Management Plan. And very detailed document that evaluated the condition of the lake at the time, but also the contents of the lake, what made up the lake, and what was the best way of trying to save the lake from becoming a swamp. And the main part of that document called for the physical removal of the mud itself, which is a nutrient creating all the weeds and future mud creation. Excuse me. So that calls for the removal of 1 million tons of mud. That is a huge project. So the board at that time, they jumped on it and said that we'll take this on. We'll try to figure out how to do it. And over the last 20 years, there's been lots of challenges. Different types of dredging occurred. I was involved in most of that. Most of the ones that failed, but it didn't fail in itself. We learned something from it, moved on, and it got better and better and better. And we have a very efficient and very successful dredging operation now. So that's there. So we spent the last 20 years of undying effort to try to overcome those challenges we have, and I'll update you on our current challenges at the end. We try to raise, or we're aiming to raise between $150,000 to $200,000 a year, which is a big number, but we've been able to do that and surpass that in most years. We have a challenge lately because of the pandemic, which is one of our obstacles. But to date, together with the donations we've received on the lake through a lot of fundraising, a lot of events put on over the years, and the support of the council and the township, we've raised almost $2 million. So it's
done a lot of work and spent it wisely. On page 2 in the presentation, they show a picture of what's happened this year. Now, we're still trying to understand the full impact of it, but that picture on page 2 that has their in color should show it, but usually we obviously have a shoreline, the water is up to the shoreline. Well, this year you can see there's 70, 80 feet of mud going out into the lake. Some of the residents actually had to have their boats towed out of their docking area by other boats to remove them at the end of the year. That's how low the water level is, so. That's raised further concerns of residents on the lake as far as what's in front of us. Page 3 shows a picture of also, again, because of the low levels in the lake, you can see the heavier growth. It's not just the invasive weed that's in the lake itself that we've been fighting with. We have the lake shore, the lakeside shoreline growth coming out into the lake, and that also would eventually need to be addressed. And you can see in that picture, it's not a great picture, sorry for the time I put this together, is there is a long dock coming out in the middle of that area to access the water itself. Page 4 shows just as the pressure froze, wherever there was just water on the lake, it's pure ice. We haven't had a lot of snow yet this year. But where you can see the snow in that particular picture, that is mud right at the surface. And this picture is taken on the west side of the lake, and even on the west side of the lake, people are kayaking. Kayak that takes a lot of water, but during the kayaking, they're actually sliding on the mud and paddling through the mud itself. Me and my boat, pontoon boat, fully trimmed up, I can get around that west end of the lake, but if we don't get into that west end of the lake and do more dredging, we'll lose that side of the lake. But again, we've lost a lot of 2 feet of water on tops. That's a major concern we need to understand and deal with. So on page 5 shows there's 4 main challenges there and the actions we're trying to take on to solve that. First, I mentioned briefly the pandemic, but the pandemic obviously has curtailed our fundraising, which is the key part of our budget is the fundraising. So because of that, we haven't been able to do any fundraising to speak of. We did have some raffles that can be done obviously without contact. We did initiate and start boat tours. We call them the Tuesday tours this past year. So every Tuesday night on the lake, we'd have 3 boats doing 2 different tours. And we did have hundreds of people come out from the community to take advantage of that. So that's public access, if you will. And we raised money by doing that. Hopefully the plan is this year to continue that. Because it was very well received by the public. But also we want to see if we get back into doing home tours and other functions that has some contact. So that's our first challenge and what we're trying to do about that. The second was the dredge itself. Because of those low water levels, we do understand the lake, but there's a lot of mud in the lake. Study originally showed us, but also there's clay shore, actually almost like roadways under the lake. Because of the lower water levels, trying to access the other parts of the lake, we end up doing damage to the barge. And that old equipment, we've always been concerned as far as how long that equipment will last. But because of the pandemic and because of our lower fundraising, we're only able to do a half year of dredging. So we spent the last half of the year removing the equipment, doing some welding and doing some refurbishment of the excavators and the barge itself. So it is in good condition now. It's ready to go to take on the next year or years. That's behind us, hopefully. Although there's obviously things happening with that. Then the other part of it is the removing of the mud itself. We've been removing a lot of mud over the years, and we obviously have to get rid of that mud somehow. So that's become obviously it's an ongoing challenge. Even this year, as an example, we did just a half year of dredging. We took about 120 barge loads, and because we're on the east side or the west side of the lake, the west side of the lake, sorry, there's still sufficient water level that we were able to really load up the barge. So it was a record year being able to put 7 truckloads in the barge at a time. So we took out 120 barge loads, 7 truckloads at a time, roughly being 20 tons. So we're approaching 17,000 tons of mud, even in the half year. So it still was a decent year before we had to shut it down. But we need to get rid of that mud, and we've been approaching farmers, or farmers have been approaching us because of, I guess, the cost of getting a lot of fertilizer. It's become even a great opportunity for us to move that mud and keep it local here. We do have some farmers who have already trialed it, and they're analyzing it. We've had some farmers actually show up with, new to me, but they're very large manure spreader. And we're able to load them live because the mud we're taking out is so dry coming up from the bottom. Reaching down to 20 feet, we're actually be able to take on the road without any danger of any leakage. And then a manure spreader and they drive it back to the farm and they're spreading it live, so. One farmer did, 2 loads a day for 2 weeks. Turned that live loading it, which means we don't have to handle it and just toss it afterwards. But we're hoping that anything, we have an agricultural background and use the board, so if you can point us in any direction as far as any concerns out there that we can help out. That is obviously a major concern that we don't have full resolution for yet, but we're working on it. There's also soil been used for reconditioning some properties, as we know. So I'm just saying together, we've been successful. We've removed approximately 300,000 tons of mud. So that's huge. And I should have included a picture for you that haven't seen it or been out to the lake to see the pits that we have. That's the GRCA land that they've allowed us to use. And we were able to build up the berms this year to allow more room for the mud, but to move the mud out of there. We do have a company on the lake that's the Kettle Lake Soil Company that actually screens the mud and take the rocks and false teeth and other things maybe in the lake out of it so we can sell it. So he's planning on doing more advertising this year. If we continue to be able to dredge, he's going to do more advertising to help move that mud. So any contacts you may have to help us do that also would be beneficial. Support our efforts. But we did lose 2 feet of water, as I said, this year. It was a drought year. I mean, it's very dry. And we know that obviously had a major impact. But we also know there's water taking in the area too. And we don't know, we would need to understand if that's having an impact on the lake itself. I know the region of Waterloo had us install a water level monitoring station on the south side of the lake. They want us to expand on that this coming spring. We're supporting them, and that's obviously their concern with the water level. But also there's some wells in that lake that had some water levels installed in the well itself. I know on the pushing track, there's also some monitoring wells installed in the pushing track. There's probably some concern on that side, so more information you can share with us what's going on that way would be helpful too. So just in general, we're trying to understand where we're going now. An eye opener for people living on the lake this year with low water level, seeing the amount of mud that we're seeing. So obviously, there's questions as far as how long we're going to be able to dredge in the future. Because some indication it's coming to an end with the equipment age and the condition of the lake being pretty good. But obviously, it's an eye opener today. So we are going to hold a town hall meeting ourselves in the end of March to try to understand educate the lake or residents and understand their appetite for continuing the work and supporting us. So we're going to be having that meeting then. And I don't know when you set your budgets or when you're finalizing that, but if there's any indication back from the council that we can share at that time, that'd be appreciated. But either way, we do obviously appreciate all the work you've done up to this point in time. I appreciate having Sarah continue on the board to help two-way communication.
Russell.
Oh, Russell.
I'm the new. It's a bit
Orange. Fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully we didn't do anything to offend you to move on. But there is a straight line now to the agricultural world. That
was our plan.
Thank you.
the tag is there. So I just put a little picture there. Never give up. I'm sure you've seen that little picture, motivational picture in the past, but behalf of the PLCA, I want to appreciate the opportunity to give you an update. If you have any questions.
Well, thank you for coming today, and we're proud of the support that we've given to the lake. The pictures are incredible. The difference from when it started to where maybe not this year, with low water levels, but and then a normal year, the lake is beautiful, and I can attest. My family owns some property down just on the Gore Road, and there's swamps in there, and I've never seen them so dry. There isn't any water, and it's incredible. So hopefully we have a decent winter with lots of snow that can melt and recharge our watersheds. when Art was still coming here, he was mentioning that this is the last year we're gonna be asking, this is the last year we're gonna be asking, and council passed a resolution that future PLCA grants would be inclusive of our grant policy. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not sure you mean by inclusive.
So our grant policy states that we'll do the equivalent of 0.5 of a tax increase as our grants that we provide to the community. So 0.5% of an annual tax increase. So that works out to be 22,000. In the past, we would do 22,000, then we would look at PLCA. So it's essentially we were doubling what we were granting to the community. So last year was it 2 years ago that we passed a resolution that the PLCA would be considered within the grant policy that we have. Does that make sense?
It doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So
So
I'm not aware of that, so I
Yeah.
was set up for.
yeah, that's why I just wanted to let you know because in the report that we have on our agenda today, it states that we should follow the policy. It states we should do a maximum of 22,000 worth of grants to the community as a whole. So I'm struggling with giving $20,000 to one member when that would only leave us $2,000 to provide to the remainder of the grant applications to stay within policy. So it's great work you're doing. I look forward to the conversation later in the agenda. But for me, it's important to spread that grant money around to as many needy organizations as we can, because they all need support. And also, you know, it's not that we're not supportive of the lake. We have the public access road that we've been putting significant amount of funds into surveys, staff time. We're also waiting on some improvements for 23. We're gonna do a walking path, some armor stone, try to make that access only accessible to kayakers and canoeists. And GRCA, we're still waiting for response on some potential for whether it be a boardwalk and from somewhere on their property. Now, the CAO and myself met with GRCA 4 months ago, I don't know, time flies with everything going on. And most of the property is not accessible due to sensitive wetlands, you can't disturb it. There were a couple options that we're waiting for a report back from them. With that being said, Mr. CAO, if we get a report back from GRCA that there's possibility of a boardwalk or some sort of access, would that be fully funded from the GRCA, or is there likelihood that there'd be a partnership for that?
We haven't put that specific question to them, but I know that was a preliminary point of discussion when we did speak with them there. And I think the indication at that time was they don't have funds available for improvements like that. They're struggling to take care of all the assets that they have. So if they would be able to permit use of their lands, any improvements would need to be funded by others. I believe that they would look at any application that we would bring forward and discuss at that time. But that was the high level indication they gave at the time.
So we just have a few outstanding items that we really need to get clarification on so that we know what our liabilities, if you want to call them that, or responsibilities are around the lake. But again, we're not banning the lake by any stretch of the imagination, but just a lot of things in the air going on right now. So
It's too bad there wasn't an opportunity through their land to actually charge for the use, therefore.
then you gotta hire somebody to stand there. I know, we're working on it. Where we supposed to start? Councilor Hurst.
Yeah, thanks for this, Brian, and I appreciate the submission that you provided. I think as replacing Councilor Bailey within your group, I'm looking forward to it. I think from a recreational standpoint, I've appreciated the lake, but looking forward more to understanding kind of the work that you guys have been doing over the past couple decades and learning and being supportive and sharing some perspectives from my standpoint. So certainly we'll connect offline. I sincerely hope it's a really positive experience.
Councilor Goyda.
So thank you.
Oh, sorry. Councilor Goyda.
I just wanted to say thanks for your presentation and thanks for sharing a little bit of the history of the association and sort of where you started and how you got to where you are. I commend the PLCA for the persevering year after year through all the challenges. It's pretty undeniable the positive impact that that all of those efforts have had on the lake, so, I just thank you for all the work that you've done on that. I just have one question with the dredging. Is there a particular, you're talking about kind of like the low water levels of the mud that's coming through around the perimeter of the lake. Is that where you would intend then to be dredging this year, is along the perimeter, or is there a specific location in the lake?
Because of the low water level, we weren't able to reach the other side of the lake, so on the lake itself, there's a big island out there, and then there's some smaller islands. There's a channel we created a couple of years ago to reach the other side of the lake when the barge is fully loaded. So we need to get to the other side of the lake where this low level is showing these pictures. We only did a half year dredging over here over on that side. So we needed to spend not only full years of budget money in that area to dig deep holes, which is really what the plan called for. All along those shorelines is where the worst condition was for the residents getting their boats in and out of their docking area. So that area, and I do have the financials attached to this, $77,000 that's in the bank right now in this report. Private people on the shoreline, which the pictures are showing some of that, will be actually moving the mud after the shoreline funded by them. So we need to get to that east side of the lake in the central part to do our job with the LTA. So by doing that, that gives the barge access to private people doing dredging.
Thank you.
Councilor Spillis?
Yes, I three questions again, echo Councilor Goyda's sentiments. Really appreciate the work you've done. It's certainly be beneficial for our other residents who would like to come to the lake and then partake in some recreational activities. So with respect to your budget dollars, it looks like you've got just under $150,000 in the bank. Is that correct?
That was up to the end of October. Lauren's been doing a real push on donations for the last 2 months. So we have increased it from there. I don't have the latest number.
So you're basically good to go this year then?
Yes, we are, except for the mentioned, but the 77,000 is the liability because we collected the money from them to do the dredging this fall, and we're able to get there. We're physically able to cross that barrier. So we've had to refund that money to those residents.
Oh, I see.
But
So the 150 doesn't include the money you got.
It does, so it's probably a promissory that they'll come back on board in the spring to get over there.
How many more years do you envision of this work being undertaken? So as the mayor mentioned, we were under the impression it was going to stop in 2021 and then just you keep coming here and you keep showing these picture photos that it's getting worse.
Yeah, I think Art being here for 10 years was very good. He's very supportive of us, but I think you beat him down a bit too over those years. But always coming here asking me for money. So now let's hand over to me in a year that it shows that you can see what's laying just beneath the water. If I trust the report that was in front of me that all the money was spent on back then to say we've got to remove $1 million. Take that as being have to do that, and I'm still looking 20 more years since we're up to 300,000. But we want to have a meeting with our big residents in March. And I've got the other answer to the question after that was, are we committed or are we not? Because we can't do it without those donations.
And the last question is tangential. There was the association wrote a letter to Councillor Bailey with respect to access to the lake. Are you conversant enough with that letter to?
Yeah, I wrote the letter.
Okay, so one question, one point that was mentioned was that Doreen Chance spoke of 2 Hesper families who rented sites on the shoreline property. One was a Pinnock family and the other was a Clark family. Each had a dock and trails, a great spot. Road access came off in section 1, and the road was such a friend and the driver could get to the site. So is that GRCA lands or was it private lands?
A GRCA land.
Okay, so that's something that I guess, CAO and mayor proceed.
That's why we were hoping that maybe, I know there's a couple of ditches there that the bridges have gone where else there was people driving in there in a Corvette, which obviously a low profile back in those years.
When did this transpire?
I don't know for sure. I'm thinking like in the seventies.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, it was Sam we met with, right? Sam and Mayor White. Mentioned that there was access off, just off town line. What is that? It's the county road, Lake Road. And then they closed it. Remember, because there was concerns, there was a house there. And, we could follow up, but
Sure, yeah, I just want to clarify, Mr. Mayor, I was concerned it was private property or, GRC and land, so that sort of opens up another avenue to pursue. That's great, thank you very much, and appreciate all the good work you do.
Thank you.
Right, this might bust you up, Councilor Bailey, I apologize.
Okay, thanks, Brian, for coming today. I just had a question. You had mentioned how it was a big eye opener with the water level being low right now. And I know sometimes you struggle with trying to get a lot of private dredging people on board. But do you anticipate now with those seeing that you might end up getting a little bit more involvement with private dredging?
Absolutely, yeah, we think the way this, hopefully, like you said, the rain and snow will come back, but the memory people will have to see, okay, that's what's below the water. So we've already had people who were doing some commitments, we're doing 3 and 4 loads, I'll now double that. Promise like for next year, so. There is more people in the Irish Creek community who want to have more grading done, and that whole west south shore. One more done.
And just the other thing, I mean, I participated in the boat tour this past summer. It was fantastic. You know, the team really coordinated that well. So is the idea to, I think I heard you say you were going to be trying to double the time to do that. I think you just did it for the 1 month.
Yeah, we had a late start the first year doing it.
Yeah.
So the late start, we want to start, so whatever is acceptable, so we want to start June. Last time, I think we didn't get going into mid-July, I think it was.
So you'd be hoping to probably double that fundraiser.
And also, as I mentioned, to try to get back to the actual home tour, that's where we did 5 homes on the lake. We did that for 13 years. We had to shut it down because of the pandemic, but we have 5 homes that showcase, and then we take pontoon boats. So I organized captain for that. So we have 14 pontoon boats that tour people around to see the homes and drop them from dock to dock. That was a great fundraiser for us.
Let's hope that can happen.
You have a resolution, Ms. Whitbox.
The council receives a delegation by Brian Reel, Postage Lake Conservation Association regarding category 3 grant applications for information.
Okay, can I move it, please? Councilor Spillis, second by Councilor Goida. All in favor? Great. Thank you, Brian. We'll be discussing the grant applications later in the agenda.
Okay.
You can stay or you can go home and watch it online if you like.
Thank you very much. I missed the opportunity to display some of my ties.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. All right, now we have Pre-Para, that's delegation.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, begin when
Good
you're
morning.
ready.
Yes, Mayor Sealy and councillors, my name is Preet Hara. I'm representing Mr. Avneet Sharda, the owner of residential property 82 Queen Street in Morriston. He's traveling Europe and should be in flight at this very moment, so requested me to be his delegate in this council meeting. The reason I'm here is that we had received a notice of intent from the township of Buslinch, dated 3rd November this year, to designate the above said property as a property of cultural heritage value or interest. We had sent a notice of objection to this proposed designation and wanted to amend and add a few comments to it. Point 3 in our letter stated 71 listed properties, whereas there are 109 listed properties. And point 1 stated zoning as RU instead of UI, which was a typing error, I guess. Coming back to the reason for objection to the said proposal, Mayor Sealy, coming ourselves from a country which gives lots of emphasis on culture and heritage, we do understand and believe the importance of these for our coming generations. However, we also do realize the importance of other important aspects required in the society and community at this time. Where every country across the globe is giving emphasis on growth of economy, it's imperative that we also consider the growing housing needs in the community. The reason this property was bought was that owner had to move here with his family, wife and daughter. Our planner confirmed that property has more potential to build townhouse dwellings, which will be beneficial to the owner as well as city for its economic growth. Buslange is within easy commuting of 4 major universities, Guelph, Waterloo, Wilfrid Laurier, and McMaster, as well as proximity to Highway 401, and can be a potential residence of lots of students and people working and commuting to Milton, Guelph, Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo, Mississauga, and Hamilton. We request that the property can be kept listed, but not designated as heritage, as it will create more restrictions for the development and will make it more costly, and the purpose of affordable housing and rentals will be defeated. We had done preliminary discussions with CMHC, Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, about affordable housing or rentals for this property. The way property is built on the lot is that it's on one side of the lot, and we can still develop the rest of the lot into townhouse dwelling with similar exterior design and keeping the original property intact. There are very few lots or properties within UR zoning, and designating this particular property, which has huge potential, will be a big setback to the housing requirements described in More Homes Built Faster Act and Bill 23. We do see other properties much older than the above said property in the community with much more heritage and cultural value, which have been built between 1823 to 1890, but they have not been designated. And certainly more efforts can be put in conserving their cultural and heritage value than the properties newer than those. As Ontario is in great need of housing and rental units, and Bill 23 is helping municipalities and Ontario government to achieve these goals, with this property development, we would love to contribute to their goal. This concludes my comments, Mayor Sealy and councillors.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any questions or clarification needed from council? Swipe question resolution.
The council receives a delegation by Preet Kara regarding report ADM 2022-069, 82 Queen Street Heritage Designation Objection and bylaw for information.
Thank you. May I move for that, please? Councillor Hurst, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Ms. Hara. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for the time. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Christmas. Council, could we take a 5-minute break to grab a coffee, washroom break? Come back at before 11:50, please. Okay, welcome back, everyone. This white box, you have a resolution for the consent agenda, please.
The consent agenda items listed for the December 21st, 2022 council meeting be received for information.
Gonna move it for that, please. Councillor Hurst, seconded by Councillor Goida. Any items you'd like to remove from the consent agenda? And the second time around either. Perfect.
Chair, just the one that staff have a recommendation for is the Halton Hamilton Source Protection Committee municipal member nomination letter.
So we can pull that one out. And
614, just through you, Mr. Chair, our current member, Dave Rogers, has indicated that he's seeking reappointment. So if council direct staff on that nomination, we can send that along to the committee.
sure, I'll move it. Second by councillors, any comments or concerns?
Today.
It's a very technical meeting and it's right off its hours.
Perfect. All right, is that good enough?
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Here. All right, now. We're on to report 22-032. Get it up here. Need that's Ms. Hassan joining us now. Or not.
Sorry, I was just having some technical difficulties in unmuting myself.
No problem.
So this is just a quarterly report that council receives that's been done in collaboration with the senior leadership team. I'd welcome any questions from council.
Yep, can I have you read that resolution, please, Ms. Whitecross?
That report FIN 2022-032 entitled the third quarter financial report for 2022 be received.
Okay, move for that, please. Councilor Spillis, second by Councilor Hurst. Any questions or comments for the director? Okay, all in favor? Carried. All right, Mrs. Sand, I believe the next one is yours as well.
So this is another annual report for council in accordance with the Development Charges Act. As we all know, Bill 23 has a number of implications for development charges. However, this report is in line with the current legislation, and it's in line with what other municipalities are also doing in terms of the indexing factor. I'd welcome any questions from council.
Okay.
That report FIN 2022-036 entitled Annual Indexing of Development Charges be received. And that index development charge rate outlined in Schedule B to report FIN 2022-036 be approved.
Can I get a mover for that, please? Councilor Bailey, second by Councilor Spillis. Any questions, comments? Okay, all in favor? It's carried. All right, now fun begins. Okay, we have the grant application. I will go to page 140. And we'll just work through them individually. And I will just ask that, I'll ask in general if there's support, and if you want to say some comments, just speak up and we'll discuss it. So the first one I'm looking at is the Aberfoyle Agricultural Society. They're requesting $3,000. Is anybody not in support or have comments with that? Okay, so we can put that one in for 3,000 so far. I have an actual question before we get further into that. As part of these grants, it states that the recipients must be, there's a list, they can't be in litigation, and they have to be in compliance with our policies. Does that include our code of conduct policies? So if members receive grants from the township and then they speak negatively about the township in the public, they have to be in compliance with that policy?
I'd have to double check the wording on it, but my guess would be no. It would definitely be for council committees and council sanctioned organizations, that type of thing, that they're doing work on behalf of the municipality. But just someone that comes in and asks for a grant and it's given to them, I don't think that you can make that right.
All right. So the next one is Aberfoyle's Farmers Market. They're asking for $3,000. Any questions or concerns on that grant application? Okay. Mr. Sand, can you hear me? Am I speaking loud enough?
Yes, it's perfect. And I'm noting the amounts just so that we can have a tally at the end.
Perfect, thank you. All right, the next one is the Ellis Pioneer Chapel. They've requested $500. Any questions or concerns around on that one? It's
It's a religious organization. The way the policy is structured right now was not permitted, so I have a motion to propose for next time around. But at this time, it's I think it's inappropriate given the policy.
Okay, is it okay that we hear his motion? Or would you rather? So it might be influential on the members' decisions. Maybe, you know what I'll say is, without. I'm not telling you what to do, but if you don't table the motion, but give the background of what your thoughts are, that might help the members decide whether they want to support the grant.
Okay, my thoughts are that with respect to the motion, we're talking the motion specifically. Yeah, okay, the churches in the past have put on a lot of programs for seniors, such as luncheons, exercise programs. And because they're not part, because of our policy, they're excluded. So my motion is basically to say, ask staff to investigate, looking into allowing funding for churches for programs are specifically benefit the entire community and do not and separate purely religious from community benefit. So I'll read the exact motion. Staff requests a report on amending the grant application policy to allow religious organizations to submit applications for community service grants, provided to demonstrate a distinct line of separation exists between strictly religious activities and a proposed community service program, and to demonstrate that the program is open to the entire community. So that's what I'm looking at is I looked at 2-3 years ago, Dove Church things for the seniors. I know my mother heart took in someone before she passed away, and it gives us seniors the opportunity to go out and do something. I think we have to support organizations that are willing to do something like that on behalf of the individuals in the community.
So what I'm hearing, Councilor Spillis, is that you're not supportive of this particular application due to there isn't enough clarity whether there's community group involvement with this church. And after we go through this grant process, you're going to table a motion to have staff review the religious component of the policy that will make at least part of their programming eligible for the grant program. So to keep it clean, we're still just going to talk about the Ellis Road $500 grant, but at the end of this, we may see a motion to move this. Comments from Councilor?
Yeah.
Councilor Hurst goes first.
Hopefully I don't take your question.
No.
I think it makes sense, functional wise, in terms of the recommendation that it currently doesn't fit the current parameters. Moving forward, change the parameters if there is a defined community benefit and fully supportive of that. I think that's like the right outcome of where we should be. So I'm supportive of the process that councilors this is articulated.
Okay, and what about the grant proposed or requested for this year?
As it currently states, I feel it will be out of scope, but maybe a question of staff would be, when would the next grant window opportunity be? Is this an annual thing, or will this come up at a subsequent meeting post a technical change?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So this is an annual grant application program. So next year, the deadline's usually August 31st for the 2024 budget year. So
Expanding
there
on
will be
that.
another opportunity.
Expanding on that slightly, would we have to place this on the work plan to be reviewed, or is this just a housekeeping item that staff can?
This is a housekeeping item that I could quickly report back on based on council's direction in 2023.
Yes, ahead of the next grant application period. Councilor, go ahead.
Yeah, this one, to be honest, was it's a bit difficult for me because other than the fact that it's a chapel that sometimes gets used to host weddings and baptisms, the grant request actually checks off all of the other boxes of the criteria in our policy. And this particular request isn't to advance any kind of religious beliefs, but rather to aid in the preservation of the historic nature of the building for all of the community to enjoy. So I want to be able to say yes, but the way the policy is worded, I understand that it doesn't really fit. So I do like what Councilor Simbolis is suggesting, to allow opportunities that do benefit the community as a whole, even though it's technically considered a religious organization, benefit from the grants that we can get.
Councilor Wilson, further words? No. Councilor Bailey?
Thank you. Yeah, I struggled very similarly with this one. And upon doing a little more research with it, I didn't realize the building was a provincially registered historic site. So I think by giving $500 to an organization voluntarily is going to upkeep a provincially registered historic site in our township seems kind of like a no-brainer, despite the fact that it has chapel and you know, there might be a few other functions that happen there. So I don't know procedurally, even if it's in the policy that says we can't, I don't know if council can override that in a meeting if enough of us are in favor. If that is the case, I would propose putting that forward today.
So in the past, we deviated from the policy with the whistle stop. So I'm agreeing with Councilor Spools that we should amend or take a look at the policy. But once you bring up the statement that it's provincially significant building, and we're dealing with heritage structures earlier in the agenda and previous council meetings that we want to protect. I would be comfortable because it's a minor amount of money, but it's not a $20,000 grant ask, that we could support this because there's likelihood that they could have applied for the grant maybe and received it. They worded it different. That's where we had troubles with whistle stop. When they put the application in it, you weren't allowed to use it for the XYZ, but if they need, the money needs to go to somewhere else and they were eligible. So I believe we can give the grant outside of the policy. If it's not, like, the policy says we shouldn't, or is there significant ramifications for doing that?
It does put you in a bit of a difficult position because then other applicants would say, oh, well, just ask anyways, the policy doesn't really mean anything. Council just going to decide on the fly at the meeting. That's kind of what some would say, right? So typically what happens if you look at the planning applications is what policy was in place at the time of the application. And then you change to the policy. If you don't like what the policy says, change it for the next application, because that way it's fair to everybody instead of being an exception for one that maybe others would have done something then too, right?
I guess, and along those lines, I just mentioned to the PLCA that we put them inside the policy to keep that continuity. So as much as I want to help them this year, I feel it'll be a better fit next year. So is there a consent? Oh, go ahead, Councilor Bay.
Well, I'm just wondering, do we know, are there any historical grants or something available through the township that we can help direct them towards or guide them or help fill out some paperwork or you know, to help them with that? Just,
Like other grant streams, is that what you're talking about?
yeah, that they might not have the avenue to do, but through the municipality, we could help guide them with that.
The only other one I know is county. No, I believe the application's deadline is passed. But if staff finds some, I'm sure they can pass that on too.
Sure, and if from time to time we receive notices through correspondence we receive from various associations for historical stuff, there is a funding application for that, we can pass it along to them for sure.
Okay, that's great.
That's good.
Maybe that's something else. Sorry, maybe that's something the Heritage Committee could also look at and see if there's anything that they can collaborate together on.
Who's on that?
Just throw in.
Okay, so I feel that the Ellis Pioneer Chapel one will be declined for this year. Okay. Friends of Mill Creek, I believe Councilor Spools is out. Do we have any questions or comments on Friends of Mill Creek? The only thing I would say is they have a pretty healthy bank account. So if we were, I don't want to, again, I want to support Mill Creek. If we were lucky with that jet fuel spill that did them major environmental impacts, we could dodge to go up there. So, yeah, other than them having a pretty healthy bank account as is, I still want to support them. So unless there was appetite around the table not to support them, I would just go on. Good. 3,000 for Friends of Mill Creek, Mrs. Sand. PLCA Conservation Association
I'm sorry, Mayor Sealy, was that 3,000 for Friends of Mill Creek?
That's correct.
Okay,
So now we're on to PLCA Association. The request is $20,000. Which is what we've already approved. Mrs. Ann. What's the total? Well, it's 9,500, right? That we've approved so far? No, 9,000.
yes, 9,000.
So to keep within the policy, and then we would have how much left over? 13?
The policy says 23,317, so just one moment.
You can do just round numbers, so we're at 9, so
14,317.
14,317 is what we have left. Any discussion on the 20,000 asked from the PLCA? Councilors, do you want me to, Councilor Spruce?
I did the math, if we discount the 20,000 and we add up all the remaining ones that are eligible, we have about $11,000. That would be available from the 22 threshold. But my concern is, we spent a lot of money to date on the Portsmouth Lake Conservation Authority. And we have residents who are hankering to get into the lake. And for us to say, we're going to give some money here and we're not going to do too much to provide access other than spending some money at $10,000 without trying to look at other opportunities such as through the GRCA, with the boardwalk, as there's, I understand you've been discussing with our CEO, or through even seeing if McClintock would open it up on some sort of a basis to allow the residents to use their facility on a subscription basis or whatever the case may be. So this year, I think we're in a tight budget situation. We have to look at the rest of the residents. My suggestion is 0 for this year, and whatever money we save from this grant program, we put it back in our kitty to offset the upcoming budget issues that we're facing. Mary comes forward with the operating.
Yeah, I support that. As I mentioned to the delegate, that there's a lot of balls in the air and unknowns and costs that could be associated with that. And again, I feel the PLCA is doing a wonderful job with their own fundraising, and they're supporting their endeavors. And I have concerns that the general public would question their contribution, like this significant contribution to that endeavor. Now that they almost seem self-sufficient. So for this year, I am comfortable with your suggestion, Councilor Spillis. And then once we have more clarification from GRCA and how our new pedestrian access is working down in at the end of Travel Road, I think it's appropriate just to maybe take a pause and reevaluate next year. Councilor Bailey.
Can I just ask, can we just go through, can we skip over the PLCA grant here, go through the rest, and then see what number we're actually left with at the end?
They're not going to change, Council Bailey, after you.
But we haven't approved the rest.
So it might go up.
In theory, it's 11.
We're dealing with PLCA right now.
So I would like to still do some sort of donation toward the PLCA. I've written down a couple figures, but it was going to be based on making sure other groups got their fair share of the pot. So I can throw out a figure, I can throw out $3,000. You know, that was kind of going to be, if they were to fall into the policy of the second level of grant funding, that would be the cap for $3,000. If we were talking about, you know, someone had asked in our questions, giving $10,000 to help with the access, then I was going to propose splitting that and doing 5 to 5. So there's my numbers.
Councilor Hurst.
Maybe a point of clarity. Can funding in this format be earmarked to one particular project per se? And I think when I'm looking at Whistling Lake, I think the dredging activities are very specific, but if we're looking at the greater public good and why I think ultimately grants should be granted, I think it kind of circles back to Councilor Sapulis's comments in the Ellis Chapel. This is a community good that they're doing. So I'm thinking along the lines for the Whistling Lake, if potential funds could be earmarked specifically towards ensuring public access or better equipping public access to the lake to enjoy the recreation activities. If that's an option, I think I'd be interested in supporting that specifically if that's a criteria that's even big.
Maybe Councillor Bailey can speak to the position of the dredging versus the public access and how PLCA means that.
Yeah, from sitting with the board and looking at what their mandate is, the association is for the health of the lake and the beautification of the lake. So their mandate is not access to the lake. So I think in their eyes, it's a total separate. Those are two different things in their mind that funding the access is not helping their mandate. That's how I interpret where
We're
they're
the
coming
only
from.
ones that have land or the GRCA, but that they are a private landowner as well. We are the only public entity that has land that can provide public access to that lake currently that we're aware of. That's good.
Yeah, I think, I guess I don't want PLCA to feel that the township is not supporting their efforts, because I don't think that's the case. I can only speak for myself, but I am supportive of the work the PLCA is doing on the lake. And I think the township has demonstrated that by literally the hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been given in grant money. And I think that was an easier decision to make up until a couple of years ago when the general public had the ability, the general ratepayers had the ability to access the lake and benefit from ultimately what they're contributing to improve. And that access is not there anymore, and that's completely understandable. It's private property, and I don't blame them in any way, but it makes it more difficult to be allocating money that all of the ratepayers are contributing to, that all of the ratepayers don't have the benefit of benefiting from. And so I want to continue to see the work happen on the lake, but the access piece is really key in sort of justifying spending levy money to fund. So I struggle a little bit with not giving them anything because I feel like it sends a message that we're no longer supporting them, but that's not really the case. I think that we need to ensure that we're allocating the proper amount of money to show the public that, you know, we are working to do something to give them that access as well. So I think I would tend to agree with, let's put that money that we would have otherwise spent on this grant towards this access and look at it again next year once we have all those details on it.
So what I'm hearing is that there's majority in favor of not providing any financial assistance through the grant. But I'd like Ms. Hassan to, at the end of this process, describe how that money that isn't allotted to the grants could help the potential tax levy increase for the overall budget. So if the public access component construction is a tax levy increase, we can offset that with the remainder of the grant money. That's a win for the community as a whole as well. And then by this time next year, we should have more solid response from DRCA on the other access components, and we'll just be in a better position to figure out where the direction is going. Does that make sense? Mr. Schultz?
Well, right now, the access is being funded from parkland dedication fees. So there is no levy necessary. And to force it to be a levy, I think is wrong.
I wasn't trying to force it to be levy, and I saw the communications from Mr. CAO. There was a little bit of confusion there, but I was trying to understand it that there was an opportunity that it could help offset some of the tax increases. Is that?
If it was my understanding, I forgot that it was being funded out of part-time reserve. So if it's coming out of the reserve, it's not going to have a levy. But Mrs. Sanity, you can speak to the fact that if we don't have as much coming out of the grant, then that would have an impact on the levy. Is that correct?
So yes, Councillor Sapoulis, you're correct in terms of that it is being funded by parkland dedication in our capital budget, so it never had a capital tax levy impact. But by not providing a grant under the grant application program, there is some savings in terms of our operating tax levy impact, if that's council's direction.
Sense. So, I guess we need to, who's in favor of suspending support for PLCA for this fiscal year? And then, well, I guess that's what it's going to boil down to. There's going to be hopefully a reduction in the impact on the operating budget. So, Councillor first. Support. That's good. Schools. No favor, so that's carried. So that's clear, Mrs. Sand?
Yes, so as part of the grant application program, it's going to have a zero impact to the tax levy for Puss Lunch Lake because we're not providing a grant this year. But the capital budget will continue to have the access project funded by the parkland dedication funds.
That's correct.
Mr. Mayor, I think the sentiment around the table is that we do support the work being done by the Puss Lunch Lake Conservation Association. I was wondering if we can ask you and the CEO to draft a letter to them, basically outlining briefly what transpired here and say, look, we do value your work and we still will continue to support you in the future.
You've seen my emails. Can he draft it and I'll just review it? Yes. Mr. CAO.
I think from what I'm hearing, the general comment that we could put in that correspondence to them would be, yes, the township is supportive of the work that the association has done. And we'd like to contribute, or council would like to contribute these funds, but for council to be able to do that, they also have to balance out the desires of the public who's providing those funds that you're giving to them. And the way to do that is to have the public access. So for you to have the public access straightened out will then put you in a better position to be able to continue to give them funding.
And I've had some conversations. I feel once the access is resolved or improved, I equate it to our green spaces. There's costs associated with maintaining those. And once there's improved access to the lake, in my mind, I can justify some funds because there needs to be maintenance on the lake, similar to maintenance on a baseball diamond, a soccer field. But right now, with the challenges we've had with the little access we have, the removal of, survey stakes and signs, and I don't feel there's much public access and use of the lake. So we're working towards it. And yes, that does. So the decision today does not mean that it won't be reinstated in the near future. It's just a process like everything else. Okay, that's fine. I don't think we need a resolution for that. Mr. CAO, we don't need a resolution for that correspondence. All right, we have Puss Lunch Minor Soccer Club for 2650. And any questions or concerns around that?
I just had a question, and I don't know if Mr. Fowler's in there or not, or if he knows. I'm just wondering how often the netting is being replaced. I think a lot of this grant, it mentioned going toward the nets. I think I see them up right now.
Did you hear that, Mr. Fowler?
Yes, I did. It's my interpretation that Puss Lunch Minor Soccer supplies all the netting and has provided all the netting since their inception. So I currently don't have any budget line or responsibility for netting on the PCC or Badna fields.
Okay, I'm just wondering if this is something they're replacing every year, because they're getting wrecked, ruined up all winter. So they're in Badna, they're up, at the soccer field there, and I'm just wondering why they need to keep replacing netting.
Well, and it leads to that comment that was provided that, Mr. Feller, you would be working with the soccer club to find a safe storage place. So is there some dynamics going on here that maybe council's not quite aware of or challenges?
No, not, I wouldn't come to that conclusion. I really haven't had an in-depth discussion yet. It's more contingent on the actual parks master plan getting off the ground and construction commencing before we really need to find a need for the soccer net storage to be elsewhere.
Councilor Hurst?
No question.
Mr. Rhoda?
Yeah, I think there was a note in there about a component of the grant money being training, which is for our policy, not a permitted use. And so I don't know how it was established what amount was for that and what amount was for the netting, but I think the number 2,115 is in there. I don't have the page in front of me.
Page is it?
Page 405 of the finance report.
405?
405.
405.
Oh, okay.
I can just speak to the allocation between netting versus the personnel cost / training costs. It was in a financial statement that they provided us. They provided that breakdown. So the amount that relates to the netting and corner flags is 2,150. And then, but the $538 relates to coaches' education. So the amount that's eligible under the program is the 2,115 for the netting and corner flags.
Yeah, so I would propose that the 2115 is what's being considered, and I think my thought on it is, given that the goals and the netting are shared with public in general, that I would be supportive of that.
And it keeps it consistent with our approach of keeping it within the policy, which is good. Okay. Discussion on that, Councilor Hurst?
I'm supportive.
You're supportive, you just mentioned it.
That's 2115.
And Councilor Bailey? Okay, so 2115 for soccer. That's what page. All right, see you later, Councilor Bailey. Coastal Safe Communities. We have $500. We'll just skip it. Science in the scoop. I'm just teasing. All right, any discussion on the Coastal Safe Community $500 grant? Councilor Hurst. All right,
I'm supportive. I think this is a new initiative, and I think it's important that council supports this type of work, and I think A, it's positive, and B, it's a good sign.
support it. I don't know why I'm individual.
Yeah, I have no issues with it at all. I think it'll go a long way to get some awareness of it.
Yeah, I'm supportive.
Okay. Welcome back, Mr. Bailey. Scientists in the school. Did you capture that? Sorry, Mrs. Sam. That one was supported, $500.
Yes, thank you.
All right, scientists in the school. Any questions or comments on that one? We'll go first. Councilor Bailey?
First. Yeah, I struggle with this one a little bit, and I've tried to reach out to Aberfoyle School Parent Council. From what I'm hearing from them, there is probably a bit of budget available if scientists in school were to approach parent council and ask. So I think I haven't seen that they've tried that avenue first. I think that would be more appropriate for this. And so I don't know if I'm quite in favor of the grant.
Councilor Hurst?
Yeah, I think I'm in the same headspace as Councilor Bailey. I think there's other avenues to fund these type of programs versus a township grant program.
Let's go to.
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Barron. First, it seems odd that we would provide a grant for a program in the school without knowing even really if the school needs it or wants it, or how many of them they want. It just seems kind of like an odd way to go about it. And I think also, if you look at the financial statements of scientists in the school, they have a substantial accumulated surplus in their financial statements, and so there's a lot of community groups in our community that need the money, and I don't think this is. I wouldn't support this.
Councilor Schools?
Yes, I would agree with the previous council statements. My slant on this is that our residents pay almost the same amount of taxes to the school board as to the township. So I'll take it out of one pot and put it in another pot. I don't think that's appropriate.
Okay, so this is San, 0 for scientists in school.
Thank you.
Not supported. Yeah, that's better. All right, the next one we have to consider is the Whistle Stop Cooperative Preschool for $500. Questions or comments on that one? Okay, that one we can pencil in for $500. All right, Mrs. Sam, do you want to give us a little, once you tally those up, just give us a indication of the total?
Yes, so the total is $12,115. And I'll just repeat each of the items just so that Ms. Hoyt Fox has it properly noted in the council resolution. So the Aberfoyle Agricultural Society for $3,000, Aberfoyle Farmers Market for $3,000, Ellis Pioneer Chapel 0 based on the current policy wording, Friends of Mill Creek Grand River $3,000, Puslinch Lake Conservation Association 0, Puslinch Minor Soccer Club $2,115, Puslinch Safe Communities $500, Scientists in School 0, Whistle Stop Cooperative Preschool $500, and this totals $12,115.
Seem accurate? Members of council? Mr. Capture, Ms. Fox?
I have, Mr. Chair, I have 3 separate resolutions prepared based on the conflicts from members of council, so they're spread out into 3 separate motions for council.
Let's start with the first one, please.
So the first motion is that council approves the grant allocations amounting in $8,615, and that includes Aberfoyle Agricultural Society for $3,000, Aberfoyle Farmers Market for $3,000, Puslinch Miners Soccer Club for $2,115, and Whistle Stop Cooperative Preschool for $500.
That's the one everyone can participate in, correct? Okay, are you gonna move for that, please? Councilor Goida, seconded by Councilor Hurst. Any last comments or questions? All in favor?
Just a question. Oh, sorry. Was that one $8,615, Courtney? Okay, thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. All right, the next one, Friends of Mill Creek, so John's out. So it's just Friends of Mill Creek is the next one?
For $3,000 is the grant allocation amount for Friends of Mill Creek.
Are you gonna move for that? Councilor Hurst, seconded by Councilor Goida.
Yep, sorry.
All in favor? Carried. Welcome back, John. And the last one is Safe Communities. Do you want to read the resolution?
Council approves the grant allocation amounting to $500 for Puslinch Safe Communities.
Move for that, Councilor Hurst, seconded by Councilor Spillis. All in favor? Carried. Welcome back, Councilor Bailey. All right, I believe Mrs. Sam that.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make the motion.
Absolutely.
Okay, so my motion is that staff are requested to report on amending the grant application policy to allow religious organizations to submit applications for community service grants provided to demonstrate a distinct line of separation exists between strictly religious activities and the proposed community service program, and that they demonstrate the program is open to the entire community.
That's moved. Can I get a second for that? Councilor Hurst. Discussion, Councilor Hurst.
I support it. I think it's very clean.
Councilor Goida?
Yep.
Councilor Bailey?
Yep.
All in favor? Joe, okay. All right, Ms. Hassan, I believe, or hold on, I better pull it up. Benefits, yes, it is you. Employee. Proposed changes to the employee benefits.
So this was a consolidated effort between Jess Furman, who's also an attendee here, and she'll be able to answer any of specific questions about the benefit changes. I can answer to any of the financial implications associated with this, and Glenn as well can assist as well. So we'd welcome.
All right, Ms. White Fox moved Jess over, and Mr. CEO said he could speak to this a little bit.
Sure. So council is aware, part of what we're doing, I believe I indicated some of this to you before, is the compensation review that we do once per term of council. We're doing that as a joint project with a number of the other municipalities. One of the things we're doing too is a review of the benefits program that we buy as a consortium to make sure that the levels are comparable, that we're getting a good deal, good value for the money that's going in. And then what we'll be doing too is looking at the coverage levels and the usage levels to make sure that the program that's in place is actually paying for the buck that's provided, and that the coverage levels are still appropriate. So that's work that's going to be underway jointly with the other municipalities. In the interim, what we've done is excuse me, we've identified that the one coverage parameter was considerably lower than the comparators, and that has been identified by a few of the staff to some of the leadership team too. So what we did was we took a look at how could what would the appropriate level be based on the comparators, and is there a way to fund that without a net impact on the budget? So Jess was able to go through, do an analysis and found a way to do that. And then there's also the aspect in here of making the access to the EAP program available to across the corporation, just so everyone has this access to the same levels of support. I think that's a very good thing. Information that's been provided to us is it's been shown in a number of municipalities and other organizations too, that access to an EAP program can actually have beneficial financial impacts on lower costs and the other things. So you can help prevent certain things before it does become a more expensive problem. So that's just the overall. I don't know, Jess, if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
No, thank you, Glenn, for that. I think that it's an important initiative that we're looking at in order to offer some more benefits to our employees outside of what we currently offer through our benefit program, which we, for mental health practitioners, offer up to $500 per calendar year through our manualized benefits. But in order to provide more access for services to employees for everyday concerns, I think would be really beneficial for employees for a number of reasons and challenges that we're facing in this day and age.
Okay, questions from council? Councilor Hurst?
No questions. Comment, sorry, no questions, comment. I think I'm very supportive of the township collaborating with other like-minded townships in terms of better understanding this. And I think generally speaking, kind of put more of my business hat on here. Retaining employees is incredibly hard right now. And I think as long as the benefits that are provided by the township to its well-valued staff are comparable with other jurisdictions, I think that's prudent on council to be supportive. And I think the last piece would be the employee wellness and benefit. Absolutely, that's kind of almost goes without saying, but I think the fact that every employee should have access to that help if they so choose to engage it. So there's.
I think Councilor Hurst has said that very eloquently and very well, and I support that.
Much shorter than that.
Yes.
Councilor Willis?
I agree wholeheartedly with the comment made by Councilor.
Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, I'm in agreement, and as Councilor Hurst is talking, I'm thinking relating it to the Safe Communities Committee, the whole mandate of that is prevention. And so I think this whole part about providing wellness assistance is right up there and super important to do. Good job.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to speak of it, but I'm going to speak of it. Yeah, watch out. Here it comes. Mary, you might want to turn your speakers off. So my benefits at my full-time job don't have a maximum amount payable for a service. So if I go in for physio or massage, and one provider charges $75, but maybe I have a specific one that is suited to my injury, charges $125. My benefits pay the entire chargeable amount up to my maximum coverage. So it would mean I'd go less to see somebody specific, where my wife's benefits have a cap per visit. So then it's almost a copay, but the total amount is still the same. So I would like staff, if you're doing a benefit review, to take a look at that, because I feel that's a bit of another way of supporting them, that, you know, instead of having to copay to go to this, maybe it's somebody that's closer to home and fits their schedule, but charges a bit more, instead of driving across town to get the $90, they're gonna get less visits, but at the end of the day, it's the same amount of coverage, and just gives the employee the flexibility to choose their provider versus doing it solely on just finding one that fits the costs to that single visit. So again, back on, I don't need to babble on, but that's the goal, that's the nuts and bolts of it. Just there's a term for it in the insurance industry, but I forget it.
Question to you, Mr. Mayor. So that's not in conjunction with this report. You're talking subsequently.
Yeah, just when they're doing the benefit review
fine.
with
Fair
the
Okay, thank you.
with the other members and bring it in online. Any further questions? Do we have a mover and seconder for that?
We do not.
We're good. Do we need to have you read the resolution? Please.
That report FIN 2022-038 entitled 2023 proposed changes to employee benefits be received. And that council adopts the amendments to the current Manulife Group Benefits Plan and the introduction of the Employee Assistance Program as proposed in the report effective January 1st, 2023. And the council approves the amendments to bylaw 009-2020 and 058-2020 as follows. Section 11 of the bylaw, healthcare benefits provided to permanent full-time employees of the township include the following, to include Section 8 Employee Assistance Program applicable to full-time and non-full-time employees. And Section 2.1 of bylaw number 058-2020, which adopts the council committees and other appointments, compensation, benefits, and expense policy to include the Employee Assistance Program. And the council directs staff to bring forward the applicable bylaws incorporating these changes at an upcoming council meeting for adoption.
All right, you gonna move for that? Councilor Hurst, seconded by Councilor Spillis. Any final comments? All in favor? It's carried. Right. Please report as this. All right, we are on to report 2022-039. Mrs. Sam.
So this is a report in order to just notify council of the great news that township staff were successful in a grant application to the Ontario Trillium Foundation for building of an accessible playground at Boreham Park. So this is great news for the township, and the amount that we were successful with is $150,000. And the purpose of this report is just to have a bylaw authorizing the entering into the grant contract.
Thank you. Read the resolution.
That report FIM 2022-039 entitled Ontario Trillium Foundation Execution of Grant Contract be received, and the council gives 3 readings to bylaw 2022-053, being a bylaw authorizing and entering into a grant contract with the Ontario Trillium Foundation for the building of an accessible playground at Boreham Park.
Can I get a mover? Councilor Goyda. You knew that was coming, didn't you? Seconder, please, Councilor Bailey. Any comments? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm really thrilled to see the upgrade come to the playground at Boreham Park. I think this money will go a really long way and bring lots of excitement and many years of enjoyment to that corner of the township. And it makes me really proud to see those improvements and to have a safe, accessible, updated playground. I think that tiny little slide in that park doesn't owe us any more favors. And so I really look forward to seeing the smiles on the kids' faces and seeing this come to life. It's very exciting. Thank you to everyone for all the work.
Yeah, I'd like to thank our Director of Finance. He seems to have the magic touch. I'll buy lottery tickets from him next year. Just a side question of our CEO or whoever is the appropriate staff. The local residents are concerned about the ditches in that particular park. We have that, do we have a program? Is it somewhere in our program to look at, investigate and schedule doing something about that?
We don't have anything scheduled yet at this time in terms of a capital project. We were kind of focusing on getting this one done and the funding for that. If that is, I think when we had the discussions, it was something that we would be looking at down the road. If council would like to direct us to come back with options of and some costing for that. I know we have some preliminary design information from the design team who's preparing this for us. We could bring that forward to council for at a future date, as well as some potential options for funding, whether it's through our own resources or if it's through an organization like Trillium or something like that. But as of right now, no, it's not scheduled as of a specific date or year to come forward, just something to be looking at in the future. We could bring that forward to council's direction.
My suggestion would be is for next budget cycle to bring forward.
I would like to see an opinion from our staff. And even just estimates on costing, because I'm hesitant to spend money on a consultant to review a drainage ditch that staff feel is an important part or a non-issue. So would you be comfortable hearing back from staff about whether they're a necessity, and if so, this would be basically an aesthetic upgrade and their estimated costing, and then if that's palatable, start assigning some money to get, who would it be, GM Blue Plan or somebody to?
Well, I believe a lot of the engineering, at least in terms of the calculation of the storage space that would be required for stormwater runoff, like that we have already through the design of the park, the playground. In terms of the design for what the implemented measure would be, like the piping and the backfill and all that, like there hasn't been a design done on that yet. So, but I'm not sure there would be a whole lot of work associated with the design for that. It's fairly standard. Basically, it's always some culverts in the street. So,
Well, there's a 90-degree bend in that
right,
ditch that
we would have to look at that.
there's a
one of
lot going on
45
there that do some aesthetic upgrades.
Mr. Mayor, I understand that. I also understand we have this AODA legislation that says sunset clause, I think it's 2025 or 27, I'm not sure. And I think it behoove us to at least understand what we're looking at. And certainly we have to push it out next year into the subsequent years, that's fine, but at least we would know what the implications are for the budget.
Yeah, and back to the AODA. The AODA doesn't dictate that the entire park has to be.
No,
AODA.
absolutely not, but certainly right now, as you know, there's only one area that you can go to access the park.
There's only one place to cross the ditch.
That's correct.
So how, okay, anyways, I'm just not quite understanding the process. Like, are we going to hire consultants to, what's gonna happen with this request?
I think what we would do is just bring it forward at during the next budget cycle and say, here's a project that we've been asked to consider. Here's the type of expenditures that would be required associated with it. So we would say that capital cost would be X. Any design work or compliance review with critical legislation would be Y. So the total cost would be approximately this. That's what we would come forward with. We wouldn't have a final detailed design or costing or run into expenses that way.
I'd be fine with seeing the numbers, Councilor Supposed, but I feel we have other priorities, but I'd be fine with seeing the numbers.
In time for next year's budget, as part of our
We could
consideration.
easily comment that.
I just worry about dumping a ton of money into consultants, but if it sounds like that's not gonna be the case, so that's good. Councilor Hurst, comments on that?
We need a motion.
That defer to the CA.
We'll include that for some budget notes for next year.
Okay, council's comfortable with that, we'll just come back with that report.
I just had a question about the timing of it. It seems a little strange to be going ahead and putting in a nice new fancy park and then doing some sort of staff comment later, getting back to us to say, oh, no, actually, we should be changing some of the drainage or the ditching or something later. I'm just wondering if it should be done more in similar timing.
the work that we would be doing in the future would basically just be infilling the ditches, if council chooses to go ahead. It's not going to impact where the playground's going to be or how it's going to be utilized or anything. This is kind of two unrelated issues. It's not as if what we're doing with the playground going in would be different if the ditches were filled in.
Great. Anything else? Last where we are. What we'll do.
We have a mover and a seconder. I think we're just having discussion around it.
Everybody's comfortable with the resolution as Ms. Whitebox read? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. This is the objection. Is this just receiving for information?
There's a little bit more in the recommendation because we haven't actually passed the bylaw today.
Okay, can you read that for me, please?
That report ADM 2022-069 entitled 82 Queen Street Heritage Designation Objection and Designation Bylaw be received. And that council affirm its decision to designate 82 Queen Street pursuant to section 29 part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And further that council gave 3 readings to bylaw number 2022-069. Being a bylaw to authorize the designation of land municipally known as 82 Queen Street as a property of cultural historical value.
Can I get a mover for that, please? Councilor Goyda, second by Councilor Spoulos, comments? Councilor Goyda?
Yeah, there was a couple of points in the objection letter. Perhaps I should have brought this up when the delegate was here, but maybe this is the question more for staff. I just want to ensure that I am fully understanding the designation correctly. The letter that came speaks to the owner's concern that the designation of the property will not allow the owner certain uses that the zoning would otherwise allow. And that the designation is essentially freezing any kind of redevelopment or renovation on any part of the house. That's not how I understand the designation to be, but I just want to clarify that designating it doesn't prevent the owner from renovating the home or putting an addition on or adding in a detached accessory residential unit. It just adds some type of potential additional requirements or conditions in order to be able to do that.
Ms. Whitebox, oh, sorry.
Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
To you, Mr. Chair, Councilor Goyda, you are understanding correctly the attributes that are identified in the report that were looked at through the Heritage Committee are very specific. There are many circumstances where you would see an addition perhaps be put on the back of a house that has been designated. But those specific attributes are the things that we're looking to protect. So it doesn't preclude development or renovation or that sort of thing, so long as those attributes are maintained and protected. It may require a heritage impact assessment, just depending on what the development proposal is. So there's still opportunity here. Yes.
And the reason I mentioned that is because it almost seems as if maybe the owner isn't fully understanding that, because just when they mention, the owner may appeal, which is their right to do so. It just seems like, it doesn't seem like they probably can still achieve what they want to do, even with the designation. So I don't know if there's a way to communicate that to the owner, but for me, I just wanted to, before we go ahead, I just wanted to clarify that was the case.
Councilor Spoulos?
Well, I guess I gather from the delegate that they want to put townhomes on the property. Oh, to me, they want to knock down to me, they would be knocking down the building.
So maybe I'll ask Ms. Whitebox, because I had this question of her. I'll just say it. So there are permissions within the zone, but then they come with a caveat that they have to be serviceable. So maybe you want to speak to that.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. So the zoning on the property does permit a number of different uses, including semi-detached, and it does allow for townhouse dwellings to a maximum number of units. But again, being privately serviced in Lynch, there's going to be limitations on that, just based on the lot size, which is, it's certainly under an acre. So typically we see lots, new lot creation needing to be at least an acre in order to service one dwelling unit. So there's likely challenges there on this property, given its size, just at the very basic level, for putting on multiple units.
But it could still have, like, the primary, like, it could still be a primary dwelling with 2 accessory. Those residential units, which effectively is.
So long as, I mean, again, just the servicing limitations is what's gonna hold back property of the size.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Bailey?
Sure. I just had a few comments on it. I think it's important for us to preserve of the history of Lynch. I mean, it says in the report, this was built in 1909, which is way older than any of us, and we'll never be able to replicate.
Well.
Where some of my reading went to was, we have a 56-page document called Lynch Design Guideline Document. And in the actual document, it actually includes this property in the Morrison Streetscape section of it. And the whole idea is to focus, it's based on the principles council endorsed in 2008, focused on reinforcing the rural character of Lynch and respecting established character, such as conserving heritage assets. So I think that fits into the document, which fits into what we're doing here today and trying to just preserve our heritage. And I mean, I know firsthand, my husband does beautiful additions on designated historical homes down in Old Oakville. And there is a lot of ways to get, you know, kind of what you want by and still preserving the heritage features.
Did I skip you, Councilor Hurst, or did I start with you? Did you start? Okay. All right, any further comments? So we're ready for all favor rating. All in favor? That's carried. All right. Mr. Bunn. This is your report.
It is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today, I'm here to present to council the Health and Safety and Harassment and Violence in the Workplace Policy Annual Review. Council may be familiar with past years receiving this policy for its endorsement. This year, staff are proposing changes to the health and safety policy specifically as it relates to work from home and that new environment that staff would be in, solidifying some of the procedures around reporting of incidents or health and safety risks in their homes. So those have been included for council's consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Can you read the resolution, please?
That report ADM 2022-070 regarding the health and safety policy and harassment and violence in the workplace policy annual review be received. And that council endorse the health and safety policy and the harassment and violence in the workplace policy included as Schedule A and B respectively.
We'll move to that, please. Councilor Hurst, second by Councilor Spillis, comments? All in favor? Carried. Ms. Whitebox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a report that comes once at the beginning of each term, and it just sets out the acting mayor's schedule in accordance with our procedural bylaw, in accordance with the act, to make sure that we have an acting mayor should there be an absence or vacancy in the mayor's office. So the schedule that's been laid out is for the full term. It's been done just very simply alphabetically based on council members' last names. And it does run us again until the end of the 2026 term. Just a point of clarity that was addressed by a member of council was that this schedule does not look to supersede the appointment of Councillor Spillis to the upper tier municipality for that role. So it would be separate to those roles of the acting mayor. Any questions or comments?
There a resolution for us?
Yes. That report ADM 2022-071 regarding the acting mayor schedule in the event of the mayor's absence or vacancy be received. The council adopts the acting mayor schedule outlined in this report, and that it be clarified that Councillor Sepoulis is appointed as the alternate member to the upper tier for the 2022-2026 term of council as approved by Council Resolution 2022-397, and the acting mayor schedule does not supersede this appointment.
Okay, I'll move for that. Well, second by Councillor Goyette. Questions or comments?
Yeah, this question, say for instance, if there's a member of council who's filling in for you in a particular month. And that person has a vacation week scheduled at the same time. What's the order of precedence? Who will fill in for the mayor at that particular instance?
Well, I would suggest if that conflict ever arises, just to contact myself. See if I'm going to be away, and then we could just deal with it internally, not.
I believe that situation doesn't happen very often, but I think what we can often do, what has happened in the past, is you just go to the next person. And list them.
As long as
That's an easy way to do it.
yeah, that's fine.
I don't miss that much, usually.
No, you don't. but-
Okay, we had a mover and a seconder, right? Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Right. This is Ms. Whitebox, 935 on my agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report and attached proposed bylaw is proposing a mandatory planning pre-consultation bylaw be adopted by council. So this would require pre-consultation in accordance with the Planning Act for site plan control applications and for zoning bylaw amendment applications. The proposed bylaw does outline that minor variance applications, which the township also facilitates, are encouraged to go through but are not required. And it does outline just some other details around any existing pre-consultations that we have ongoing, and also a timeline for when a pre-consultation would be deemed expired. And they would have to go through the process again. And I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Sure, can you read the resolution, please?
The report ADM 2022-072 entitled Mandatory Planning Pre-Consultation Bylaw be received. And the council give 3 readings to bylaw number 2022-054, being a bylaw to require mandatory pre-consultation for certain planning applications within the township of West.
Can you move it, please? Councillor Bailey, second by Councillor Hurst. Comments? All in favor? Carried. All right, well, Junction Railway update, Mr. CAO.
And just a short update to provide to council. I think it's good news to see the excellent cooperation we're getting well in the railway, the number of items that were brought up over the past year. It outlines the work that they've done with tide cleanup and the noise of the signings, as well as the issue of fires. I know that was a big concern over the past year along the railway right of way. So they're working extremely well with us and in our fire department on that issue. You know, our fire chief has had numerous communications with them, and they continue to have communications as the things that can be put in place to minimize future risk, and things are going well. So I just wanted to share a basically good news story as well. You have to hear negative things, so this is a good news story, so I have to make sure that you're aware of this as well.
All right, Council.
Yeah, it is indeed a good news story. It's 2 concerns I still have. The removal of all the storage ties. I know that there was a response that was made that there's some ties in Corwin that are going to be picked up. But there is a big dump of ties down a ravine, just in the area of Multi. Okay. So if you take a look on a Google Maps, you can see it's something like 200 meters worth of, 200 meters worth of ties. That there's a steep slope going down into a wetland, and there's ties go all the way down that hill. So that to me is a sizable undertaking. So granted, the Corwin is small, but that is a big undertaking. So I will be interested in knowing when they plan to tackle that. The other thing is, yes, there's been a lot of headway made on the storage tracks, but I do think we can try to do one better and see if they are willing to relocate the storage track operations into town. I know they've done some rail work at York and Victoria Road. I think they put in the siding there for some operation. I was wondering if there's an opportunity for them to continue doing that and relocate the siding operation to someplace within the city. It is disruptive. It holds up traffic. I know we've had various residents giving us exact times of the delay and all that sort of stuff. I know that those residents have called up the MTO because MTO are responsible for this, but I think it is something that as we progress to a more sophisticated municipality, we should be looking at, see if we can relocate this.
So just for clarity, you're meaning remove the siding, entire rails.
I'm saying the operation right now. I can appreciate if there's gonna be emergency, you wanna put something in there. Okay, I'm talking about the operation. Right now, they're shunting back and forth or whatever, just relocate that. If you have an emergency in the future, I accept that. I don't think we can push them to relocate the storage tract, but at least there'll be once in a blue moon in an emergency situation, and everybody's got to be acceptance of that.
That's good. Good suggestion. I think the reality is they're probably not gonna rip track of it. I agree 100%, but to transition the shunting operations away from frankly residential area from this part is a great recommendation. Thanks.
I would also like the conversation around the contribution for our road crossings to still be engaged. I know there was great gains in reducing it, but I still have trouble that the city owns it and they put, and just because of historical legislation, we're responsible for it because they have multiple crossings within their own jurisdiction and they just foot the bill. To pass that on to our taxpayers when they're making profits I don't feel it's in good faith to a neighboring municipality. So it's not that I want to pass a resolution and force their hand, but I still like to encourage GJR to absorb those costs within their own operating budgets and not place it on our postage taxpayers. So I believe that
I can speak to that. That is part of as you may be aware, I have regular discussion, regular meetings set up with GJR to go over railway issues, and that is definitely one of the things that we talked about. And the proportion of a crossing cost that's being passed on to Portland is now considerably smaller than what it has been in the past, which is a good thing. Because basically what we're doing is making sure that the costs that are allocated, first off, that it complies with the applicable legislation, because it is defined in legislation as to what cost sharing should be. But we're making sure that it's to the extent possible under the legislation that it pertains to costs that are mostly related to the road component of it, and that any of the aspects, or at least to the extent possible, the aspects that are related to the operation of the railway are borne by the railway, not just passed on to us by a simple ratio calculation. So it's to show that that component is more road related than railway related, basically is the evaluation that we do. And then we have been quite successful with them in those discussions, and the cost breakdowns on the crossings has been beneficial to us for sure.
We don't need a resolution for.
So this that's the list of stuff that we discussed with them. What I'll do is I can report back to council then on that pile of ties that you mentioned, as well as moving the storage of cars and what could be done to facilitate that type of request. I can report back to you.
Mr. CAO, did you ever contact CP to get the ties removed from Portland?
We have been trying, and finding the designated contact for that is the journey.
I know things have been busy. It's just if we can just.
We're working on it.
Please. Okay, any other comments?
I just want to say thanks to our CAO for establishing that line of communication. I think I agree that there is still some work to do specifically with the shunting component, but I think that the improvements that have been made it's not a small undertaking, and it's been a big improvement to the quality of life, especially that transloading noise not being there anymore, so, thank you for speaking up on behalf of all of us.
And the patience, and sometimes the cogs of governance move slow, but we got there eventually, and Mr. CAO and I had a meeting with Pam Guthrie and the CAO of the city. I advise that, I don't know. 6 months ago, it was just a meet and greet. And the mayor at the time asked, how are things going with the train and, the concerns, and we expressed how that train loading or unloading, whatever it was really bothering the constituents, and we were grateful that they moved it out of there. They're appreciative to hear that. So we thank them for that, and it's good. It was good dialogue, good little meeting, but it wasn't just about GJR. And so the mayor up there is cognizant of the impacts, and as you've stated in your report, the conversations are going in the right direction. So again, as Councilor said, thank you for that.
In terms of the thank you, would council be comfortable if I pass along that thank you to both for the cooperation and partnership and improving the communication? So I think that will go a long way too.
Absolutely. The council certainly appreciates.
Next one. Second. It's just for information, right? If you ever see that for information, think of the mover in a second, please. Councilor Goyette, Councilor Spillis, all in favor? It's carried. Right. Is this one? Mr. Bunn again. Yeah, 22-074.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a really great story here for our annual township communications and engagement report. There are a few points I'd like to highlight for council that really highlight the success of our social media program. The first point relates to our website. And so since the launch of our social media program, that was back in January of this year, there's been an over 200% increase of traffic to our township website from social media accounts. So that would be direct links, people clicking on our posts through Facebook and Twitter. So that's a great news story in terms of pushing out communications and connecting with our residents. The second point that I'd really like to highlight is related to Engage Plus Lunch. So council is familiar with this platform being our primary tool for engaging the public on asking questions, surveys, putting out design ideas. We've done lots with that program over the last year. Since last year, where we had 6 engagements, there's been an increase in visitors of 124%, as well as an increase in engagement of over 47%. So what that means is we're getting a lot more people heading into Engage Plus Lunch to check out our whatever that may be, our surveys or our engagement opportunities, but also that more people are actually following through with that engagement and providing their feedback and comments. So those are 2 really great statistics and data to share with council. Happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Move the resolution, please.
That report ADM 2022-074 entitled Annual Township Communications Report be received for information.
Can you move for that, please? Councilor Hurst, second by Councilor Goyette. I was looking at, anyways, I thought Bailey said Goyette. Anyways, any questions or comments? Mr. Bunn? Mr. CEO?
I just wanted to add one thing, just so that council is aware, I asked staff to go through and just look at the number of subscribers and followers that we have on these. These are people that wouldn't necessarily be engaging with the municipality in other ways in person, right? More traditionally. So they told me it's like 653 individuals are now engaged in communicating and following what's going on with the municipality that wouldn't have before. So I think that's a great news story, and that's credit to the staff and the great job that they're doing on that. To have that level of participation that wasn't there a brief time ago is pretty good. So thanks to staff for that.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey?
I just had a question. Do we have any, for Jeff, I guess, do you have any targets for how many people you want to engage by the end of next year? Are there any goals that we're working towards?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to be fair, there's no set targets, Councillor Bailey. What we're doing is trying to grow the overall reach and our span of followers overall as much as we can. So being so new, it is a little more difficult for us to identify who we're going to capture over the next year. What I can share is that through the paid advertisements, so in the report, we highlight that $20, for instance, gets us a reach of almost 3,000 people. So every time we're doing those paid advertisements, we are seeing a slight increase in our followership. So it is tough with social media to identify targets, but this probably isn't the best answer, but our overall goal is obviously to just keep increasing as much as we can. So I think through the paid advertisements, we'll see that happen as we're hitting people who may not find us organically through social media.
Well, what's yours?
Two brief comments. I'm curious if you've noticed any seasonality difference in terms of social media uptake throughout the calendar year. And the second comment is in terms of the staff time required to maintain the social network accounts, for lack of a better way of saying it. I'm just curious if you can maybe just explain a little bit, and I see that at a business level, we struggle with how you resource those appropriately. I'm just curious, Jeff, if you can share how the township staff are doing that in a sustainable manner.
Absolutely. I'm getting some back, sorry. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll speak to the seasonality question first, or your comment on that. We don't see a season per se, but we do see topics. So during the election, we saw a bit of an upswing in engagement on our platforms that was particularly related to vote by mail, for instance, or opportunities to vote. So we do see on the topic that slightly go up. Related to your second question on the amount of staff time, social media so far we've seen has been relatively low staff investment in terms of the day time. What we have done is our communications and committee coordinator has put together a very slick program internally where we plan out our communications well in advance. So I believe we're on a quarterly basis or biannually, where staff put together all of the social media posts for the next three or 4 months. And then those are scheduled to go out. So the investment is relatively low. And then we obviously respond to issues as they come up too. So if there is road closures, we'll share posts from the county, for instance, or if there's any emergency posts coming from the fire department, those will get shared. But for the most part, day to day, it's relatively low investment.
Thanks, Jeff. That's encouraging to hear that you're taking a proactive approach. I think that's best practice. So well done there. And just at a personal level, I think I've tried to reach out and look at those, and I think they're fantastic tools at a personal level. I think whether it's the Twitter account or the Engage Post Lunch, and just the website's really clean and easy to navigate. So well done, staff.
No, like I would reiterate those same comments. I think it's great to see the great growth, the steady growth that's been happening. And to our CAO's point, I'm particularly pleased to see that there is an uptake in people contributing their feedback, especially through that Engage Post Lunch website, when they may have otherwise not done that. So that's valuable information for us to have. And I myself have been really impressed with all of the material that has come through social media. I am still not on the Twitter, so I don't understand how that works yet. But definitely through Facebook, it's been great content. It's easy to share, so I'm confident that it'll only continue to grow. So thank you for all the great work.
A question for our staff, with respect to providing more exposure to these social media platforms that you have, would it be appropriate to ask you to put something in the next tax bill, sort of a notice saying these are available type of thing? Please avail yourself of this. The reason I'm asking is Councillor Boyd and I have been dealing with the residents in the Gorham Park area, and they're saying we don't know anything about what's going on. Put it on our bulletin board. Well, to me, we're in the age of the website, the social media stuff is the modern bulletin board or community bulletin board. So I was wondering if it makes sense to make more residents aware that we have Twitter account, Facebook account. You can subscribe to get push emails on what's transpiring in the township, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So through, oh,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
Mayor Sealy. Through you, Mayor Sealy. It's a great question, Councillor Sepoulis. And yes, so we have just completed the draft of the tax insert, and it has been highlighted as one of the highlights for the clerk's office going in. So we are certainly making it known that those accounts exist. So you should look forward to seeing that come out in January.
Great. And the last thing, sort of tongue in cheek, do you need a blue check for your Twitter account?
Oh, hey, the mayor does.
I hear we could pay for one soon.
On that note, is there any way the mayor gonna have control of social media accounts after about 7 o'clock at night?
No.
No.
That's a real fun. You guys are no fun. Okay, so, you have a recommendation?
It's for information.
For information. Are you gonna move it, please? Councilor Boyda, seconded by Councilor Bailey, all in favor? Carried. All right, any council reports? No? Bylaws, Ms. White?
The following bylaws be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2022-053 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into a grant contract with the Ontario Troyon Foundation for the building of an accessible playground at Bourne Park. Bylaw 2022-054 being a bylaw to require mandatory pre-consultation for certain planning applications pursuant to section 34 and 41 of the Planning Act as amended, and to delegate authority to waive the requirement for pre-consultations for certain Planning Act applications. And bylaw number 2022-055 being a bylaw to authorize the designation of land located at 82 Queen Street as a property of cultural historical value.
Can we move it for that, please? Councilor Bailey, second by Councilor Spillis, all in favor? It's carried. Any announcements, council or staff? Okay, should we?
I think I've noticed on social media, the trees, the Christmas tree.
Trees for tots?
Trees for tots.
I don't know if they do that, but you can drop off. They pick them up in the city, don't they?
Well, Council Bowman was involved in doing that last year with Simon, the Alps.
I think they do put them up in this.
Yeah,
At the transfer station or your house?
No,
We can
it's
sign
not.
up.
you can sign up.
Sign up and then.
Yeah.
Listen to it.
Been on the township. Social media, I think.
Okay. What else? Any other announcements? We don't need a resolution for that, do we? All right, we will go into close.
That council shall go into closed session under section 239 of the municipal act for the purpose of adoption and receipt of the November 30th, 2022 closed session minutes and confidential verbal report regarding advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And this is regarding recent changes to the plan.
Mover, please. Councilor Bailey, second by Councilor Hurst, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Okay, Ms. Whitebox, you have a resolution for us, please?
The council moves into open session at 2:19 p.m.
Ready to mover, please? Councilor Spillis, second by Councilor Hurst, all in favor? Carried. Next one.
The council receives the November 30th, 2022 closed session minutes and the confidential verbal report regarding advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose regarding changes to the planning act.
And move for that, please. Councilor Hurst, second by Councilor Bailey, all in favor? Carried. Next one. Is that it? Oh, there's 3. Okay. Any business arising from the closed session? It's actually applicable and it wasn't a joke. It's awesome. All right, notice of motion. Any new business? Reformatory bylaw, please.
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw number 2022-056 056, being about to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the township of Whistler at its meeting held on the 21st day of December 2022.
Move for that, Counselor Hurst. Second by Counselor Willis, all in favor? And adjourn.
Council hereby adjourns at 2:21 PM.
Mover Counselor Hurst. And Counselor Willis, all in favor? Carried.